Welcome to Infinite Novel. Dive into epic alternate realities. All rights to original creators.
Chapter 1, Ch1 Ren, a 17-year-old young man with blonde hair framing his face and falling on his back in a short tail, watched with his blue eyes as a man entered his booth in a restaurant. Standing up, Ren smiled. "Hello, you are Ebisu, right? It is nice to meet you." He politely greeted him with a small bow. Honestly, as a reincarnated person, Ren disliked all these cultural customs of this world. But when in Rome, it was quite troublesome. Why did it have to be Narutoverse of all places? He would have really preferred a more easygoing setting. "Greetings, Chunin Ren. I heard about your request and graciously decided to fulfill it," Ebisu dramatically exclaimed while moving his head in just the right way to make his glasses glint from the reflected light, but under one condition. He spoke in a deeper tone. "Right." Ren's smile froze and his lips awkwardly twitched as he motioned for Ebisu to sit. The man acted a bit too self-important for Ren's tastes, but he let it pass because this was his very first chance in a long time to get what he wanted. For 2 months now, ever since he became a Chunin, Ren has been looking for a way to learn the shadow clone technique. Unfortunately, Konoha did not have a ninja library like it did in all the fanfiction he had read in his previous life. There was a civilian library with books on perfectly civilian things, but a convenient place where a ninja could access ninja techniques of various ranks for free? If that existed, everyone would be using it, including the many spies from other villages that are no doubt in the village. Konoha's higher UPS were not stupid. Such a place did not exist. Ninjas could buy techniques at Konoha's armory from a catalog of some village-owned techniques. But it wasn't a simple process and it depended on a person's rank and merit. There was an entire system to gauge one's merit based on his missions and stuff. Shadow clones was a Jonin level technique, and while everybody who became a Jonin could learn it, not many people did. Unless you were Naruto, there wasn't much of a point in learning it. Having your chakra pool in a battle is tantamount to suicide. Clones that dispel with one hit are not worth the massive cost. It really only worked for Naruto because he could make hundreds of them and not even be winded. For everybody else, it was a reconnaissance technique that should not be used in battle. Not when there were other, much cheaper, and much more durable elemental clone variants. Ren, however, was just a Chunin and could not get the technique from Konoha's armory. So, he paid for a mission, requesting someone to teach it to him. When he did it, he felt smug. He felt as if he had found a loophole and was surprised this was allowed. But he quickly realized the problem. Ninjas were a secretive bunch. In the fanfictions in Ren's previous life, a dude could just come to Guy and tell him he is interested in taijutsu and Guy would buy him weights, train with him every day, and even teach him his signature technique, the 8 inner gates. That was not how this thing worked in reality. Ninjas prided themselves on their techniques. They did not teach them willy-nilly. Ren's mission was registered for 2 months and absolutely nobody came forward, willing to teach him. Part of it was that accepting Ren's mission meant becoming responsible for his health during his tutelage, and shadow clones were genuinely dangerous to perform. The technique was in the Jonin level section for a reason, and Ren was still just a Chunin. Nobody wanted to take the responsibility of teaching a fresh Chunin a dangerous Jonin rank technique that could kill the user if it was performed wrongly. Another part of it was that Jonins who knew the technique had better things to do. It might not have appeared like it in the anime, but Jonins were very busy. But Ren felt the biggest part was that ninjas simply did not like sharing their techniques. They worked really hard for them. They had to climb the ranks and possibly buy their techniques unless they had a Jonin instructor or were from a clan. They did not want to just give them to somebody for free. Even Jonin instructors did not teach their techniques to all their pupils. Usually, they taught them to be competent ninjas for a Chunin rank, and maybe they picked one of the 3 to impart some of their techniques, but even then they would not teach them everything. It was just how this world worked. Techniques were the life-saving secrets of their trade. They were the stuff that earned ninjas their livelihood. Not even in Ren's previous world would masters teach their apprentices everything they knew about their profession. They usually kept the valuable knowledge, the stuff that truly makes good money, to themselves. It was the same thing in this world. What condition? Ren asked as he sat down. He tried to play it off, but he was quite nervous. After 2 whole months of nothing, finally, somebody was willing to entertain his request. But it seemed there was more to it. Of course, there would be strings attached. Silly me. Ren inwardly sighed, his eyes not leaving Ebisu as he wondered what the man could want from him. Ebisu didn't instantly answer. He just took out the mission scroll and 2 other scrolls from his vest and put them on the table, making Ren curiously raise an eyebrow. "I will not teach you the technique. Instead, I will provide you with a scroll on it." Ebisu started, and Ren had to admit, for a comedy relief character from the anime, the real-life Ebisu was one smart motherfucker. This way, he would pocket the money from the mission and completely avoid the responsibility of teaching a dangerous technique to a Chunin. And if Ren got killed learning it, it wouldn't be Ebisu's fault. Ren was recognized as an adult in this world ever since he graduated from the academy. He was responsible for his actions. If he decided to try learning a dangerous technique from a scroll that was on him, Ren was starting to see that Ebisu's rank of Jonin was not exactly unearned. "On top of that, I want you to take over an assignment from me," Ebisu continued, making Ren inwardly frown. Now this part of these talks was the truly important one. Ren was starting to get desperate after 2 months, but he wouldn't just accept some sort of suicide mission meant for a Jonin just to learn the shadow clones. He was not that dumb. I recently received a very generous offer from the Hyuga clan. They want me to teach Hinata Hyuga. Alas, I am far too preoccupied with the honored grandson and don't have the time. Ebisu shook his head in feigned regret, almost causing Ren to groan when he realized where this was going, and he didn't like it one bit. The problem was that this world seemed to be an alternate universe. Ren remembered his past life on the night the Kyuubi attacked Konoha. Everything seemed to be the same as in canon from his meager information gathering when he was a child. But after the Uchiha massacre, something probably flipped in Sarutobi's head because he did not just ban early graduation from the academy. He also made the graduation age 16 instead of 13. And since then, canon was fucked. Yeeted out of the window. Worse yet, the village had small problems for 3 years afterward due to the decrease of genins in the field. But Konoha was strong and it withstood it. Then, when the first batch of 16-year-old and more proficient genins came out, Konoha kinda dominated. And it was quickly noticed. So, while the other villages low-key laughed at Konoha for 3 years, it didn't take long for them to realize that Konoha's new policy was working. They also promptly implemented it, increasing the graduation age of their own academy equivalents and fucking up the future even further. Needless to say, Ren was still sometimes having a panic attack when he thought about the future. It was one thing to know that by the time he turned 20, a vengeful and murderous chakra goddess capable of blowing up cities with her pinky would come back to the world and he would be on the opposite side on the battlefield. Well, if he survived Madara, Kabuto, hordes of immortal resurrected cage-level ninjas with infinite chakra, and didn't get caught in the infinite Tsukuyomi on top of that. Yup. He was fucked. It sounded quite hopeless if he was honest. But it was a completely different thing to know that but also have his foreknowledge compromised because Sarutobi decided to fuck it all up with one decree. Would Pain show up at Konoha's doorsteps when Naruto graduates? Since he will be 16 then? Wouldn't that be an automatic game over? Or would Akatsuki's plan be pushed back since it seemed the fourth Mizukage was still alive? Naruto and his classmates were 14 now but the sand/sound invasion didn't happen. Even the Chunin exams that were supposed to be in Konoha happened in Suna instead. So far, it seems the Chunin exams in Konoha will happen half a year after Naruto's class graduation. This part was the same as in canon. So, would Orochimaru attack then? Would it change? How was Ren supposed to know? He was going sparse just thinking about it. The only thing he reasonably could do was to keep his ears open for any sort of info on Jinchuriki while trying to get stronger to survive whatever bullshit this world was going to throw at him, hoping that Naruto and Sasuke could save the day. Ren didn't like feeling like that. Knowing that his life depended on somebody like Naruto? Don't get him wrong, watching Naruto's antics was funny. When it was anime. But Ren knew just how many situations Naruto survived due to sheer dumb luck. All it would take is one slip up and Naruto would be no more. What if Zabuza decided to swing his sword at the kiddies instead of just appearing in the middle of their formation during his first attack? What if Naruto didn't manage to summon Gamabunta when Gaara was trying to Sabaku Q his ass into a paste? What if Pain actually did the smart thing and brought some Baijuya chakra suppressing seals with him when he fought Naruto? What if Sasuke made it in time to Orochimaru to have his body snatched after his defection? Literally, anything could go wrong. And that's if the world was still going the canon route. Now though? Sheer spite was probably a big part of the reason why Ren didn't just give up and decided to put his all into becoming powerful in his own way. He decided he would either get there or, hopefully not, die trying. Because what else could he do than try and hope for the best? Naturally, I can't just refuse. The Hyuga clan is quite influential. And that's where you come in. Ebisu beamed, trying to sound as if he was doing Ren a favor. Ren was not buying it. Chapter 2 Ch2 Ebisu's kindness. I would usually go with this kind of offer to Miss Korone. Ebisu ruefully sighed. Alas, she recently became a jonin and signed up for a duty as a jonin instructor. His cheeks reddened and it was obvious to Ren that Ebisu was genuinely sad that he could not curry favor with the woman. Ren was only half listening to Ebisu, though. He was trying to put things together in his head. He wondered if this was how Korone received her spot as Hinata's caretaker in the canon during Hinata's later academy years. Or was that even a canon thing? He couldn't remember. It was 17 years since his reincarnation and while he tried to remember all the important points, the details were kinda spotty by now. It was not as if he had something like a clemency, after all. With all the fanfiction he read, he wouldn't be surprised if some of the details he took as facts were plain wrong. For example, Naruto. The kid was not physically abused at all. No mobs. No beatings. Nothing of the sort. Ren mentally shook his head, calming his straying thoughts and refocusing on the important issue at hand. Being Hinata's tutor was going to be a long-term mission with a heavy time investment. If Korone was still a Chunin on the verge of becoming jonin, the connection to the Hyuga clan could really help her get the promotion. Nepotism was a real thing in this world too and there were many elite Chunin who had the necessary skill to be jonin but never managed to get the rank up. Especially the specialists who heavily focused on one ninja art like Korone had it rough. The requirements were harsh. Jonins had to be good in all the primary ninja arts. You either had the skill, or you had just enough to be passable plus some political backing. In canon where Hinata was still a kid and wasn't deemed a complete failure, where there was still a slight hope that she would be a late bloomer and maybe even become the clan head later on, this would have been a godsend opportunity. Ren could see why Ebisu would offer it to Korone if he tried to get a date out of her. But in this reality, Korone already had a team and she was a jonin. She didn't have time or need for this. And Hinata? The girl was 14 now, still meek as a lamb, still losing to her younger sister, still showing exactly zero aptitude for the kunoichi life and the position of the clan head, still a stuttering mess. Even more now, to be honest. If this were before the Uchiha massacre, the girl would have been a kunoichi for an entire year by now, and that probably made all the difference to her clan. Hinata was no longer the heiress. She was set to be sealed upon her 17th birthday, and Hanabi was now officially the new clan heiress. There were even some rumors outside of the Hyuga clan about Hinata being a failure as a kunoichi nowadays, and if Ren had to bet, he would say the Hyuga clan elders spread those in order to put pressure on Hayashi and get the girl sealed as soon as possible. But he didn't have any inside information, and this was just his guess based on what he knew of canon. The fact that Hinata still had until her 17th birthday before she was sealed showed how much Hayashi cared. The man probably couldn't put it off any longer. Hinata's standing in the clan was much lower now than in canon, as she was no longer the heiress. She was just another future branch Hyuga member. And with that, the benefits of being her tutor tanked too. There would be no favors for her tutor. It now made complete sense why Ebisu was trying to push this opportunity onto Ren. He probably couldn't refuse it without getting a massive hit to his reputation and some heat from the Hyuga clan, but he could throw this hot potato to some other idiot. After all, this was basically a babysitting duty. The Hyuga clan wasn't expecting Hinata's tutor to turn her into a badass kunoichi. They just wanted her to become competent in the field as a genin by the time she graduated. Meaning, they just wanted somebody to help her with her academy work. Enough to make her pass with grades that won't tarnish the Hyuga reputation. Honestly, fresh chunin like Ren should be overqualified for that. Not to mention a jonin renowned for his abilities as a personal tutor like Ebisu. This whole assignment sounded like a massive pain in the ass. The only upside was the pay, which was irrelevant for Ren since the Hyuga clan might reluctantly accept him as Ebisu's substitute with the man's recommendation, but they will definitely not pay him the same money despite the heavy time investment still being the same. Hell, some clan elders who dislike Hinata might prefer Ren over Ebisu. It would be much cheaper for the clan, and the chance of Hinata becoming competent enough to win her clan headship back from Hanabi would be lower. I am giving you an opportunity here, Ebisu said in a kind tone. With this, you might be able to form connections with the noble Hyuga clan and get to learn the technique you seek. He smiled. I would have done this assignment myself, but I am too busy nowadays. So, I decided to use it to help my fellow Konoha comrade, and when I saw your mission, it just clicked. Maybe in the future, you will be able to repay this favor I am giving you, Mr. Ren. He spoke as if Ren owed him for this, but Ren just sat there, smiling, as he listened to Ebisu. Cool as a cucumber. He just kept smiling. When Ebisu was done, Ren amicably nodded. I see. Ebisu-senpai is truly caring. I can see now how you could become well known as the best personal tutor in the village. Inwardly though, this bastard totally thinks I am stupid. Ren deadpanned as Ebisu preened under the praise. Ebisu's plan wasn't bad. Ren could put the pieces together and see the whole picture only because he focused on gathering any information he could get his hands on to try and puzzle out how future events would be affected. He also had his foreknowledge, and while most of it was flushed down the toilet by Sarutobi's great decision-making skills, a lot of general information was still usable. A run-of-the-mill fresh chunin wouldn't have any way of knowing these things. He would probably believe this was a great opportunity and would be grateful to Ebisu for years to come. Ren's status as a recently promoted chunin was probably also a part of the reason why Ebisu decided to approach him. He thought him to be still mostly clueless about political factions within Konoha and how things worked. Most fresh chunin would not realize that this golden opportunity was not useful to them. They would see them make a connection to the influential noble Hyuga clan and tunnel vision on it. Ren could easily see most freshly promoted chunin fall for this bullshit. But, I gratefully accept this opportunity, senpai. Ren calmly said with a peaceful smile. You truly helped me out with this. He opened his mouth to follow up with, I hope I will also be able to return the favor one day, but then his mind registered what he was about to say and he stopped. He meant it in the, I hope I will also be able to screw you over one day way. But Ebisu would misunderstand him, and if Ren one day became strong, he might pester him. Saying that sentence would make it more troublesome for Ren to politely tell Ebisu fuck you in the future, so he refrained. Can I ask you to take care of the process and inform the Hyuga clan, Mr. Ebisu? I have no idea where to even start with that kind of stuff. Ren asked in a sheepish tone, rubbing the back of his head. If the man wanted to throw him into a shit situation, the least he could do was to properly put the work into setting it up and persuading all the concerned parties. No way was Ren going to bother with that. He could already see how utterly bothersome it would be to make Hayashi Hyuga accept the change. Ren was happy to sit that conversation out and leave everything to Ebisu. Ebisu eagerly nodded. Leave it to me. I can do that much. Just sign the mission scroll and the assignment from the Hyuga clan, please. Once I have your signature, I will do my utmost best to persuade the Hyuga clan. Ren had to wonder if Ebisu wasn't going to throw him under the bus by saying something like, he begged me for this opportunity, and as the best in kind private tutor Kana has to offer, I just had to reluctantly help out my kawaii. That would definitely not help Ren to make a good first impression on Hayashi Hyuga, and Ren could totally see Ebisu doing something like that. Alas, it didn't really matter. Screw Hayashi and his impressions. Ren signed the scrolls and pocketed the scroll on shadow clones after checking it. Then, Ebisu quickly excused himself and happily legged it out of the restaurant, maybe a bit too quickly, but Ren was just a freshman so he totally wouldn't notice, right? Ren just rolled his eyes at him as he pulled out his fuinjutsu notebook and started fiddling with some ideas while eating the dishes on the table. The joke was on Ebisu. Dealing with Hinata would be no doubt troublesome beyond the wildest Nara dreams, but the girl had Byakugan, and Ren was a reincarnated individual. Who knows? Maybe she could even help him with some of his ideas. Ren's lips involuntarily stretched into an excited smile. I wonder if some of the fanfiction theories about Byakugan and how it could be useful to a ninja will work. Maybe it could help with ninjutsu? After all, it can see chakra. So surely. He distractedly chewed on yakiniku while feeling like a kid about to enter a candy store. One thing was certain. He was so going to make Hinata learn medical ninjutsu at some point. The girl was going to become a damn good medic ninja even if he would need to drag her to that point kicking and screaming. Ebisu and the Hyaga clan will only expect Ren to make Hinata capable of passing her graduation exam in 2 years with a good score. But he wasn't going to allow his student to be the same kind of a waste of space as the other Hyagas. She wasn't going to be wasting her utterly broken bloodline that could freaking see chakra on funny chakra pokes and call it a day. He was going to make her into a competent kunoichi and experiment with Byakugan's capabilities to his heart's content even if it gave all Hyaga elders a heartstroke. Believe it. Chapter 3, CH3, Shadow Clones. It took Ebisu an entire week to set things up and Ren was very happy about it as it gave him time to learn the Shadow Clones. Contrary to popular belief, it wasn't easy. Just crossing your fingers and shouting the technique's name to the heavens was not enough. Trust him. He tried. And he felt like an idiot afterward when nothing happened. He was 5, then. Remembering it, he felt like an even bigger idiot. Because if he had miraculously pulled it off, the technique would have killed him with how costly it was. Even today, the biggest problem with learning the Shadow Clones for Ren was the chakra. It cost a whole lot. He could maybe do 5 tries before he was spent and had to wait for hours until his chakra pool recharged. So, Ren had to go slow, try it, and then analyze and figure out what he was doing wrong. The technique was quite complicated too. It took Ren 6 days and by the end of it, he had to concede that Naruto was a genius, even if he was an idiot. Then again, recalling the other geniuses he remembered from the anime, Ren had to admit that these two labels go hand in hand in this world. Ren recognized that Naruto was really good at ninjutsu years ago. It was when he was learning Rasengan. The fact that Naruto managed to pull it off during the short time he and Jiraiya looked for Tsunade was astonishing to Ren after he experienced just how difficult it was. That said, Naruto had enough chakra to train an entire day without a break. Ren could give it an hour at best before he had to call it quits due to exhaustion creeping in. That, like nothing else, hammered down just how special Naruto was in this world. Chakra-wise, Ren was not like Sakura. He was above average for his age and rank. And while he got much better than he was years ago when he tried to learn Rasengan for the first time, he still acutely felt the need to use his chakra efficiently, because it was a very limited resource. The anime did not do it justice. Since it followed Naruto's life, the chakra cost of techniques was mostly glossed over. The dude could just spam them all day long, and even if he got near chakra exhaustion, Karama Chakra Battery just recharged him free of charge. The ninja Jesus did not need to trifle himself with mortal worries like chakra capacity, unlike Ren and the rest of the ninja scrubs. In this world, he was the biggest cheater of them all. Much to Ren's dismay, he had only one day to try some of his shadow clones plus fuinjutsu combo ideas, and most of them were in the very initial test phase, but so far, he was happy. Ren did not want to learn the technique to use it in combat. He focused on fuinjutsu. He had years to consider things like his specialization when it came to ninja arts, and he was very aware that he couldn't just learn it all. Maybe if he was stuffed into Naruto he would have tried that. With 1,000 shadow clones, it might even be a possibility. But Ren didn't have such leeway. He had to specialize to be effective. Just like every other ninja alive, nobody was master of all. After thinking of both the pros and cons of every ninja art for literally years during his early childhood years, Ren picked fuinjutsu, because that was the only thing that ever worked on Kaguya. No taijutsu, no ninjutsu, and certainly no genjutsu ever even scratched her. Naruto landed a hit on her face, but it didn't even faze her. Heck, it did not even leave a bruise. And while Ren's hope that he would get so good at fuinjutsu that he could give trouble to Kaguya might be foolish, he had to at least try, no? So, why not choose the only thing that could actually affect her or the Baijuyu? Maybe the fact that he wouldn't need to half-kill himself with physical training, stewing himself in his sweat under the sun, and panting in exhaustion every single day might have had something to do with his decision too. It was no wonder his taijutsu still sucked. He hated physical training, loathed it with his very being, and eagerly cheated at it with his fuinjutsu. That old-fashioned Saitama training every ninja in the village tried to do as some form of self-torture? Yeah, screw that. He had enough physical education classes in the academy to be completely fed up with that bullshit. He was an otaku in his past life and being reborn into Narutoverse would not change that. He might have spent his whole 2 last academy years creating the absolutely best, most user-friendly, and just slightly uncomfortable while still beneficial self-adjusting gravity seals he could manage to come up with, but it was totally worth it. It got him a get out of the jail forever free card when it came to physical training. If he had trained properly in the physical aspects of being a ninja with his gravity seals, he would have had a body as strong as Guy's in a few short years, with 10th the effort too. But taijutsu was not only about having a strong body. Technique and fighting style were important too, and Ren just had to admit to himself that he was not and never will be that talented at close-quarter combat. It was much better to invest his time into fuinjutsu for Ren. That's where the shadow clones came in. He had many ideas, but not enough time. He had many dangerous experiments to do but didn't want to die in a fiery explosion. Fuinjutsu had a reputation for being dangerous for a reason, hence why he was so desperate for the shadow clone technique. Almost every really good idea he had was dangerous. Almost every single one had a high chance of going horribly wrong, but with shadow clones, that no longer mattered. Ren could create 5 copies with his current chakra capacity. That was actually really good. He once spoke with a ninjutsu specialist jonin who had above average chakra capacity for a jonin rank ninja, and even that guy could only make 7 copies. Sadly, the bastard refused to teach Ren the technique despite being wasted. He just laughed Ren out of the room. Sure, Ren was around 10 years old back then, but still, laughing at him was rude. That said, creating 5 clones was pushing it for Ren. Each of the 5 copies would have very little chakra, making them useless both in combat and for training purposes. Creating 3 was optimal. 2 if he actually wanted to train with chakra. But Ren learned the technique to help him with fuinjutsu research. For that, he didn't need much chakra, so 3 copies were just fine. Fuinjutsu was very chakra efficient. His clones could brainstorm fuinjutsu ideas for hours without going poof. And they could experiment for quite some time too, depending on how much chakra a seal needed. But the most valuable use of shadow clones so far was the creation of exploding tags. Ren was a part of the barrier core. He got there after getting assigned to Team 7, which meant that fucktard Haytake and his equally retarded Bell test. No, nobody used such ridiculous bullshit as a test in the village. Yes, Ren knew others used it in the past, but surely they were not as unreasonable as Haytake. Yes, Ren was salty. Konoha was known for teamwork, but it was not something jonins required from genins fresh out of the academy. Nobody tested teamwork of all things. Ren knew that much. He asked around. His classmates were very willing to share their stories. Teamwork was something that developed over time. It wasn't supposed to be there from the very start. The academy was a competitive environment in the first place. The students competed with each other constantly. It was encouraged, and it was expected. You can't just throw them, with that mindset cultivated for years, and tell them to compete for bells while secretly expecting them to work together and actually think they would do what you want. Of course, they are not going to do that. There is a reason why none of Kakashi's previous teams passed, duh. Jonins are supposed to teach teamwork. The emphasis on the word teach is really, really important in that sentence. Even Kakashi's very own team was as dysfunctional as they come, always arguing, always fighting, even having some weird love triangle. Despite knowing the answer, and almost screaming it to the faces of his would-be teammates, Ren's team flunked. Because his teammates just didn't want to work together, believing that one of the 3 would not pass a bit too much. There was no makeup test like Naruto had. Nobody tied to the post. No don't feed that guy thingy. It was just, yeah, didn't work together. Shucks to be you, tee-hee. Honestly, Ren realized that Haytake just didn't want a team. No matter what, Ren's team flunked the second they had the misfortune of being assigned to Kakashi. He wasn't that angry over it anymore anyway. A person should not be angry at the mentally ill. Fuck Haytake. So, Ren failed, but he didn't return to the academy. There was no returning to the academy. That was a blatant lie meant as a form of psychological pressure. Once you graduate from the academy, you are a Konoha ninja. There is no easy way out. You signed up for military duty. Congratulations. The Jonin test is just a way to determine if you get into the elite Jonin track course or not. Having an experienced ninja who can show you the ropes and teach you the basics is invaluable. Many people who manage to get on the Jonin-led team become Jonins later in their lives. That's statistically proven, and it is why the village wastes a few Jonins to babysit some talented genins. It's basically an officer course. Those who fail their test are redistributed into various departments in Konoha's military depending on the talents they showed in the academy, or if they are not particularly impressive at anything, they end up in the Genin Corps, the place for the fodder. Of course, even somebody from the Genin Corps can become a Jonin, but it is much harder for them. It usually requires so much commitment and hard work that would make even Guy proud. Ren was assigned to the Barrier Corps because his fuinjutsu aptitude was noticed. While it was called Barrier Corps, it was really just a fancy name for the fuinjutsu division. Its main responsibility was the various barrier fuinjutsu around Konoha, hence the name. It wasn't anything special. No, they did not create teleports, nor did they learn how to seal Baijuyu. They created exploding tags. As a member of that division, Ren had a weekly quota of exploding tags he had to create and hand in to the Konoha armory. It was a very bothersome task and ate up a very big chunk of his time. As a Chunin, Ren had to make 50 of them a week. That was around 1 to 2 hours of work per day, 5 days a week of repetitive work where if he didn't focus enough, he could blow himself up. Some days Ren even regretted ranking up to Chunin. That's how bad it was. But alas, only Chinins could access some fuinjutsu scrolls in the Barrier Core library, so Ren took one for the team, all in the name of pseudoscience. But thanks to his shadow clones, he was finally free of that chore. There was no way in hell Ren would be ranking up to Jonin even if he could. That Kasuk guy? The Eternal Genin? He was totally onto something when he refused his promotion. The increase in workload was truly not worth it. It's not as if Ren had to be Jonin to become strong. Just look at Naruto, the Genin that became Hokage. Chapter 4, Ch4, Meeting the Hyagas. Ren sat in Hayashi's office, nervous and trying to prevent himself from sweating with some clever application of chakra he made himself in his younger years when he was bored out of his mind in the academy. In front of him with a desk between them, was Hayashi in all his stoic glory and bland grey kimono that wouldn't be amiss in a labor camp, and Ren was genuinely happy that Hyagas could not read minds, staring dispassionately at him with a stiff poker face. But from the atmosphere in the office, Ren had the inkling the man did not like him all that much. It made him wonder what kind of bullshit Ebisu told Hayashi. To the side, closer to the wall rather than the table, sat Hinata in her jacket, making Ren briefly wonder why she wore it inside, and her haircut in a bob cut that really did not do her looks much good. Her face also clearly betrayed that she would love to be anywhere else but here. It was anxiously scrunched up and her eyes darted all over the room but at her father and Ren. She really looked like a cornered animal that wanted to flee. When Ren greeted her a few minutes prior, the girl couldn't even look him in the eyes properly. It was bad. A part of him regretted taking Ebisu's offer, but then he had to remind himself how much time he was going to save every week and how much research and experimentation it opened up for him, only to be reminded how much time he would have to spend actually teaching Hinata because his pride would not let him neglect her once he took her as his responsibility. He had very mixed feelings about his situation. Your duties as Hinata's tutor will be teaching her how to be a competent ninja and helping her with her academy practice. You shall escort her to the academy in the mornings and pick her up in the afternoon. Then, you can either bring her to the Hyaga compound or proceed to give her lessons. Her afternoons and evenings are free, but I want to see her back home no later than 10 in the evening. Hayashi spoke, giving this tutoring thing some ground rules. Ren barely managed to nod his understanding when Hayashi started speaking again. My daughter is unfit for the kunoichi lifestyle. It pains me to say, but with the increased graduation requirements and her lack of talent, she will have a hard time getting good enough to graduate. That's why it was decided to hire a personal tutor so she wouldn't shame the Hyaga name further. Ren slowly blinked, keeping his expression impassive as his mind tried to process what he just heard. Was that burn necessary? He inwardly asked himself with a wince, noticing from the corner of his eyes how Hinata ashamedly ducked her head and gripped the hem of her jacket with both hands. Hayashi basically called her incompetent enough to be unable to become genin on her own to her face. Considering that even civilians managed to do that, it really showed how much faith he did not have in her. Unfortunately, she was deemed unfit to receive more clan training until she showed she was worth the time and effort. Something she hasn't done for a very long time. He continued, throwing a disapproving glance at Hinata, but she stayed silent and Hayashi broke his poker face, actually showing a small disappointed frown. If only for a second. Stop it. She is already dead. Ren inwardly sighed when he noticed the hint of tears in the corners of Hinata's eyes. But Hayashi was not done yet. You may try to bring her up to speed, and if you manage, I would be most grateful. But don't worry. Failure is expected. Now you are just deliberately firing shots into a corpse, man. Ren's lips twitched. That was harsh. If the girl lived with this for most of her childhood, it was no wonder she turned into a mess. Hinata released a small sob before shutting her eyes as she wiped her tears with the sleeve of her jacket. She barely managed to choke the rest of her sobs, her lips quivering as she held her emotions inside. This time, however, Hayashi did not look at her at all, as if she wasn't even in the room. It made Ren wonder if the man was truly that bad at parenting or if he was experimenting with some new form of mental torture for children. I also feel I need to warn you. My daughter showed a proclivity for inappropriate thoughts about males outside the clan. This made Hinata's body visibly shiver and Ren realized Hayashi was speaking about her crush on Naruto. It made him wonder what was up with that, but he wasn't stupid enough to ask. Such a distasteful hobby was reluctantly tolerated while she was the heiress, but as Hyaga, she has a duty to her family. I can no longer avert my eyes. And considering the man had Byakugan, that's a serious thing to say. Ren also understood that this was a subtle warning for him. Don't worry. I have an inborn mental block preventing me from romancing underage girls, he dryly said. He was a touch rude, but honestly, he was so done with this prick. As a reincarnated individual, he was a tad bit more mature than his peers. It was almost impossible to make friends. As for romance, Ren would love to have some of that. But the younger girls were immature and the older kunoichi were, well, kunoichi. And that was a massive problem on its own with the brainwashing Konoha had going on. He wasn't 100% on the I die for Konoha bandwagon and he didn't want to start a relationship with some fanatic only to always look over his shoulder, wondering if his beloved kunoichi was going to betray him for some I am a good Konoha ninja points. Signing and deciding to leave this depressing topic, Ren instead focused on what Hayashi said and couldn't help but mentally chuckle. Duty to her family, my ass. He inwardly rolled his eyes. What an excellent way to say that she is supposed to breed only with her family members. Well, at least now he knew how to give the girl some serious motivation. Naruto just might save the day without even knowing it, as expected from the protagonist. Good. Hayashi seriously nodded. I'd like to ask you to watch her and report any indecency that would bring shame to the Hayaga name from her side. We shall correct it promptly. Did this prick just ask me to Gestapo his own daughter with her still in the room? Ren wondered as he noticed Hinata slightly flinch, realizing that the indecency he mentioned was Hinata's stalking problem. Clearly, the Hayagas threw the boot hard on Hinata and her activities after she stopped being heiress. Ren expected this to be bad, but the situation exceeded his expectations. I had someone look into you. Hayashi changed the topic and Ren found himself involuntarily glad about it. You became a Chunin only a year after your graduation. That is commendable. While you are no genius, that's still sufficient to help tutor my daughter through the academy. Brah? He switched targets from Hinata to me, didn't he? And with that, Ren's amusement was back. Unfortunately for Hayashi, Ren was not a child. He also didn't give a damn about Hayashi's opinions, so his words did not hurt him. Such a shame that Niji hadn't graduated yet, or I would have a field day pointing out that not even their fabled clan genius managed to become a Chunin within a year. He regretfully thought. Ah, the missed opportunities. Even if the promotion was issued from a less regarded place like the Barrier Corps. Hayashi continued, and Ren had the suspicion the man was doing it on purpose to see his reaction. Heh. He totally just implied my division is inferior. Ren thought as his lips quivered. He just barely managed to prevent himself from smiling. Because from a ninja point of view, the man wasn't wrong. Most of them were not fighters. Is there anything else I need to know? Ren asked, interrupting Hayashi's observation. He was genuinely curious about what the man would say next. I know you are an orphan, but it would do you well to learn some etiquette. Hayashi's tone did not even fluctuate as he said that. It stayed bland and polite. Maybe my daughter could teach you. It is one of the very few things she is actually quite knowledgeable about, even if she constantly fails at practical implementation. Unfazed, Ren just nonchalantly shrugged. Okay, if you would allow it, my lord, I'd like to take my new student to training grounds and get our introductions out of the way, maybe test her a bit to know where to start. Better, Hayashi said with a mild frown, definitely not liking the casual shrug. He then nodded at Hinata before looking back at Ren, dismissed. Ren didn't need to be told twice. He gestured at Hinata to follow him and left the room, hiding behind his guise of ignorance and not even giving Hayashi a farewell bow as was proper. In the end, maybe the man did manage to get under his skin. Chapter 5, Ch 5, Hinata Hayaga meeting Hayashi made Ren question if the man loved Hinata at all. Maybe the canon had it wrong? Or was Hayashi acting like a total bastard due to some stupid clan politics or something? Honestly, Ren didn't care. His mood was somewhat ruined. Training Hinata was firmly classified as a chore in his mind, but now he was getting emotionally invested because he felt pity toward the girl. Her situation was worse than in canon, but unlike canon, there didn't seem to be anybody in her corner. Well, the circumstances pushed her under Ren's tutelage, and despite his misgivings, he was going to give her a fair shot. Somebody had to. Arriving at a small clearing in the middle of a forest within the training ground number 41 at the pace of a jog that a fresh genin should be able to follow, Ren stopped and looked behind himself as Hinata almost reached him, breathing slightly harder while sweat was covering her face. The girl was clearly in good physical shape for her age, but that heavy jacket was not a good choice during summer, especially not while exercising. Right. Ren nodded and approached a nearby tree before sitting on the ground and leaning his back on its trunk. Make yourself comfortable. We are going to have a small talk while your body calms down. The jog here took quite a long because this training ground was Ren's favorite. There were many types of training grounds with various terrains. This one was a public training ground so anybody could come here, but because it was further away from the village, not many people came here. Better yet, it was very big, so even if somebody did come, there was quite a big chance they would not walk on Ren's training since he liked to use the forested parts at the back of this training ground. Hinata unsurely followed Ren's order, her head ducked and looking at the ground while choosing a tree 4 meters away from Ren and imitating him by sitting down and leaning her back on it. Introductions first, Ren cheerfully said, inwardly sighing at how withdrawn in her shell the girl was. If it was Naruto, he would have had already sung him an entire story about ramen and his goal of becoming a Hokage. My name is Ren and I am a Chunin from the Barrier Corps division of the village. I focus on fuinjutsu. I like good food. Ren's lips suddenly quirked up into a small smirk, and today I have discovered a newfound dislike for Hayashi Hayaga. Your turn, he said, enjoying how Hinata's head whipped toward him at the last part of his introduction, and she gave him a wide-eyed look full of shock. Now that Ren thought about it, this was probably the first time in the girl's life that she heard something like that said about her father. Honestly, Hayashi's behavior wasn't the reason he said it. Ren's words were truthful, but he also just felt the girl needed to hear these words. I am Hinata Hayaga. Hinata unsurely started speaking, from the Hayaga clan. Ito, Taijutsu. She embarrassedly flushed at that, and it took her a few seconds to gather her confidence again and continue, but Ren just patiently waited. I like my sister. Ren raised his eyebrow at that. The girl said that one without stuttering. And I dislike, the girl fell silent, glancing at Ren before ducking her head and clutching her hands together. And when Ren thought she wasn't going to speak further and was about to end the introductions with a sigh, he heard her faint whisper, my father. Owlishly blinking, Ren was floored. He did not expect that when he made his own introduction. The canon Hinata never disliked her father despite how badly she was treated. He wondered if the past year was truly so bad for her that the girl's feelings on the matter actually changed. Well, it did not matter for now. Okay, let's set some ground rules first. Ren said. Hinata slightly nodded with a muffled MHM. Rule number 1, Ren proclaimed, making a slight pause to create suspense, the jacket has to go. Hinata's eyes looked at him in shock for the second time that day, making Ren self-satisfied, but he decided to press on. Rule number 2, you are going to grow your hair out. He told her in a no-nonsense manner and the girl actually blushed, probably confused about what was going on. Well, why are you not taking the jacket off? You do have a shirt underneath it, no? Ren asked with a raised eyebrow, but Hinata only clutched at the hem of her jacket, looking unsure. Why? She quietly asked. Because I want you to grow a damn spine. He couldn't tell her that. With a sigh, Ren decided to explain a bit differently, it will hinder your training. It is a very nice jacket, and it really was. And you look good in it, and she really did. Ren smiled as the girl's cheeks reddened even more, but she still seemed to pay his words rapt attention. But during our training sessions, please take it off. It wasn't as if Ren wanted to ogle the girl or something equally inane like that. He just needed her to grow less shy, and since the girl seemed to have body issues, there was a straightforward way to do it. Making her wear fewer clothes and praising her appearance here where there would hopefully slowly build her self-confidence as she became a stronger kunoichi under Ren's tutelage. The quick way to do this would be to throw her to Anko for a week or two. But while Ren did want Hinata to become more confident, he didn't want her to show up wearing only a mesh shirt and trench coat. He could already imagine Hayashi's expression if that happened. Unfortunately, Ren had to do this the slow way. Reluctantly, Hinata obeyed and took her jacket off. Ren had to say, the girl was going to have some serious assets when she was finished growing. She quickly tried to cover herself with her arms out of embarrassment despite wearing a lilac shirt. So, Ren decided that she needed another distraction. As for your hair, that's for my personal enjoyment, of course. He sagely nodded, you are going to be a very pretty girl one day. Hearing that, Hinata whined, not used to compliments, her hands covered her red face. But she was still not fainting, which pleased Ren. He was kinda trying to gently probe her limit in this regard, but it seemed that since he was not an orange-wearing idiot there would be no problems with her fainting due to slight teasing. That pleased him immensely. Having her randomly faint would definitely get old really fast. He didn't have the patience to deal with that level of incompetence. Smiling at the adorable little thing in front of him, Ren decided to throw her a bone. If you do well in your training and your hair becomes long enough, I will teach you hair techniques so that it won't be a liability but an asset instead. So do your best. MK. Now that seemed to cheer the girl up and made her look a bit eager. Good. She wasn't such a lost cause, after all. Chapter 6, CH6, Ryukugen busted? Alright. With that, the introductions are over. Let's do some ninjaing, then. Ren spoke as he slowly stood up, gesturing at Hinata to follow him. You are 14, so if I remember correctly, your class is learning the tree walking now in the academy? Did I get that right? When Hiruzen Sarutobi increased the graduation ages, he did not simply let the kids slack off for 3 years. Nowadays, to become a genin a person needs to know how to tree walk and water walk too, but learning those takes months each. Once again, the anime did not do these skills justice. Naruto and Sasuke learned them in a week while Sakura got it on her first try. But that is not a correct representation of how learning these abilities usually goes. Both Naruto and Sasuke have much more chakra than their peers. So, they could go on, training for hours, while a normal 13-year-old kid could last maybe for 30 minutes tops. There was a reason why kids were not taught these skills in the academy. They simply did not have enough chakra to make practicing worthwhile. Quick math. Let's say that Sasuke trained tree walking for 12 hours a day for 5 days. That's 60 hours spent on it. But if a child can only train for 30 minutes a day before getting exhausted, then the child would need 4 whole months to get to Sasuke's level in that skill. These 4 months would be spent in intense frustration as making progress would be very slow for the kid. Having almost a day-long break between 30-minute-long practice sessions would feel like crawling. Ren would know. He went through the experience. He felt he was not making enough progress, but there was nothing he could do about it. It felt like shit. That was the difference and why the academy did not teach it. Not to mention, children are not the most patient beings. Many would give up halfway through the 4 months if they even reached that far. Ren only managed to stick with practicing and not throw the towel into the ring because of his mature mindset. Teaching an 11-year-old and teaching a 14-year-old is a massive difference. When a child enters puberty at around the 13th year of life, the body starts growing rapidly, both physically and mentally, and chakra reflects that growth. The most chakra growth happens between the 13th and 20th year of life. It's why the ninjas train the most at those ages. It was also why the academy students previously graduated at 13. The villages didn't throw kids on the battlefield for kicks and giggles. There were real reasons for doing things in certain ways. Ren wasn't saying there were no better ways. If nothing else, Sarutobi's decision to increase the graduation ages showed that things could be done better and even provide a more effective result. But well, it is what it is. Yes. But I already know that. Hinata mumbled, looking at the ground. Hinata, look at me. Ren gently spoke, causing the girl to raise her head. No, don't avert your eyes. Keep looking at me. The tips of the girl's ears reddened, but she did what he asked even if it looked like she had to fight with herself to do so. Okay. Now repeat that sentence again. Ren patiently said with a small amused smile. He couldn't be harsh with this girl. That wouldn't work. She experienced harsh treatment her entire life. She understood that. No. Smiling, being easygoing and amicable was the way to go. Hinata gave Ren a timid questioning look, but Ren just encouraged her. Go on. I'll already know. Tea tree walking. Again. I already know tea tree walking. Again. It took a few tries, but Hinata was slowly losing the stutter as she started to grow somewhat fed up with Ren ordering her to repeat the sentence. I already know tree walking. She finally almost shouted on the 12th time she had to repeat it, looking very peeved. She even gave Ren a small and brief glare before she turned her head to the side with a blush when she realized what she had done. Ren took that as a massive progress. Good girl. No stutter. He joyfully exclaimed, and without even realizing it himself he ruffled the girl's hair. When he realized what he was doing before the situation could turn awkward, Ren stopped and played it off by turning toward a nearby tree. Well, then, since you say you know what you are doing, show me. He gestured at the tree. Walk. With a nod, Hinata did as asked, and she didn't seem to have much problem. She didn't need to run up. She just normally walked as if the tree bark was the ground and gravity did not exist. Your tree walking is good enough. Ren noted, the only thing you need to train when it comes to that is endurance and experience, keeping it going for long periods of time. And that can only be trained by doing. So, we, and by that I mean you, will do a tree walking version of Dodge the Shuriken for 2 hours as a warm-up every day. Ren gave Hinata a winning smile, almost causing her to falter and fall off the tree when she heard about the great morning torture he was going to make her go through. Don't worry, I will help you by throwing the shurikens. It's going to be fun. She should be grateful too. Ren didn't have anybody to throw shurikens at him when he trained. He was being very kind. With a small smirk at how reluctant the girl looked, Ren spoke, come on, follow me. There is a pond that way. I am going to show you water walking. Not waiting for her response, Ren just turned around and started legging it toward the pond. It took them 3 minutes of leisure walk to reach the pond, and Ren instantly walked onto the water's surface. Activate your Byakugan and observe properly. Look at what I am doing with my chakra in my feet. You are adjusting your chakra according to the water surface. Hinata muttered with brows furrowed in concentration as she tried to put her foot on the water surface only for it to sink. Ren happily observed her as she tried to do it again. It was nice that she did not need to be prompted to do it. On her 5th try, her feet finally started pushing against the water surface. It still sank, but there was a visible resistance to it now. Ren tilted his head. This was way too freaking fast. You are still observing how my churka is doing it, huh? Hinata's concentration was broken due to her surprise and she almost fell forward into the water, but Ren was quick enough to catch her and gently put her back on the shoreline. You are learning the technique very quickly. Are you trying to imitate the way my chakra is doing it? Was supposed to do that? Hinata timidly ducked her head, not seeing the dry look Ren shot her for stuttering again. With a sigh, Ren shook his head. No. You are doing great. And the girl's entire face went red. Continue. Don't be afraid to ask me to take a few steps if you need to see how my chakra would behave or ask questions. I can stand here all day. With a small poof, a notebook appeared in Ren's hand and he opened it, thinking about some of his fuinjutsu theories there and how to improve them. He was happy that he was not wrong. The Byakugan was busted and Hinata did not need him to verbally teach her much. He only needed to be there as an example and the girl's eyes would do the rest. 30 minutes later, Hinata stood on the water's surface, trying to hide the big happy smile stretching on her lips as Ren congratulated her for her achievement. Adjusting the chakra is still difficult. She tapped her foot on the water with a small complaint. Yes, but don't worry. Eventually, it will become a reflex. Ren told her. He had to admit, he was a bit envious of the girl. It took him 2 months to get to the level she achieved within 30 minutes, and she did it without falling into the pond once. The highest place she was wet after this training session was the middle of her calves. Ren always knew that bloodline ninjas were special, but now he had seen it and he was still working on believing how bullshit this whole thing was. It was a very bittersweet feeling. As her teacher, he was proud, but as a ninja, he was disgruntled. Unlike Sharingan, Hinata's Byakugan did not allow her to copy techniques instantly, but since she could see chakra, she could see exactly what she was supposed to do with her chakra to imitate what Ren was doing. She just needed to practice it and learn it for herself. Ren had no idea why Hyagas did not utilize this part of the Byakugan, but for some strange reason, they held disdain for both elemental ninjutsu and medical ninjutsu, going as far as forbidding their children to practice them. They also didn't have much regard for genjutsu because their eyes could see through them easily. It was silly, and Ren would not allow Hinata to develop a mindset like that. Since you succeeded in walking on water and still have some chakra left, I guess you deserve a reward, Ren said as he exited the pond with Hinata curiously following him. He just now noticed, but the girl was way less tense around him now than she was when they started. Unsealing several water balloons, Ren grinned. Oh, yes. He was going to do exactly that. While he wasn't going to teach the girl all the steps for Raiznan, at least not yet, he knew that the steps themselves were the best chakra manipulation exercises available. And since she was Hyaga, learning how spinning her chakra worked could potentially help her learn Kaiton. He led her to learn techniques by observing during this training session, after all. And she did have Byakugan and did live in the Hyaga compound where the main branch members practiced. Now, he wasn't going to tell her to learn it. At least not for some months yet. He was wondering if she could come to that conclusion by herself and how long it would take her. Taking one balloon into his hand, Ren put his chakra into it while swirling it in multiple directions at a very fast speed with quite a force. The balloon popped within a second, causing Hinata to shriek in shock as she was showered in water. Ren might or might not have done a little chakra thingy to direct the water in a certain direction. Yup. He was definitely still but hurt that she got the water walking down so easily. Chuckling at the huffy pout the stammering girl gave him, Ren took 2 water balloons. He gave her one while starting to swirl his chakra within the second one, this time more gently and slowly. "Do you see what I am doing with my chakra?" he asked Hinata, who activated her Byakugan again and nodded as she curiously watched the balloon while trying to imitate it with her own, causing it to at most slightly move on her palm. After 3 minutes of doing that, Ren gradually increased the speed of his chakra, until the balloon popped a few seconds later. Once you can spin the chakra in multiple directions, just practice to make it faster. When you get to a certain speed, the balloon will pop. He told the girl, "It took me 5 months to learn, so don't feel bad if it takes you a few months." A splat suddenly resounded through the surroundings as Ren was drenched in water from Hinata's balloon, making him stare at her in shock. In response, the girl only gave him a sweet, overly innocent, smile, blushing deep red as she covered her smiling lips with her hand and softly giggled, averting her head in embarrassment. "No. Fuck this. You gotta be kidding me." For the sake of his sanity, Ren mentally decided this didn't happen. Chapter 7 Ch7 Food of Gods. After telling Hinata that the trick with the water balloon was secret and she should not share it, the training was over for the day. She did not have much chakra left anyway. Ren escorted her back to her clan compound and went on his way. That happened yesterday. Today, the training session was nothing special. Ren just fiddled with fuinjutsu ideas while absent-mindedly throwing blunted shuriken at Hinata, who was dodging it while water walking. He then retrieved the shuriken with a chakra string, only to repeat the process. Her face when he told her that since she mastered water walking, they were going to play the dodge the shuriken on water rather than on a tree was priceless. She even threw a glare or two at Ren for a second after the 20th time she fell into the pond. Ren had a lot of fun trying to make her glare at him again, all in the name of confidence building. It was for the greater good. When Hinata's chakra became considerably depleted after an hour of doing that, Ren had her run laps around the pond, while having a shadow clone throw shuriken at her and scream dodge. It only took her 2 falls into the pond to realize why she had to run around it. Ren's clone was deliberately throwing the shuriken in a way that led to her stumbling, slipping, or tripping into it. That would show her for drenching him with a water balloon. All in all, they were done for today in 2 hours and Ren took Hinata home. Done with his work for the day, Ren sent 2 shadow clones to the training ground 41 and let them loose to experiment with their recent ideas. He wanted to join them but his stomach grumbled in protest, sending Ren on his way to the Yakiniku-Q restaurant. Since he found himself in Konoha, Ren naturally had to try out the Ichiraku ramen, but he couldn't say he found it as enchanting as Naruto. Sure, it tasted good, but Ren still preferred a proper meal with a lot of meat. Yakiniku-Q was a great restaurant for that. The best in the village, really. Not to mention, Ren was the proud owner of a 50% discount for a lifetime there. Sitting down in the restaurant, Ren put his open fuinjutsu notebook on the table and was fortunate enough for a waiter to instantly approach him. He ordered some cooked potatoes and a steak and made himself comfortable. The reason Ren owned the lifetime discount in this restaurant was the food. When he was younger, he couldn't just train all the time. He didn't have enough chakra. Technically, he could have trained physically for the rest of the day after his chakra ran out, but Ren absolutely hated physical training. He couldn't stand doing it for more than 2 hours a day. So, the question arose. What was he supposed to do with the rest of his day? This was before he found his first fuinjutsu scroll, so it was not like he could have lost himself in the magnificent intricacies of the sealing art either. In the end, Ren decided to try his hand at recreating food from his previous life. This whole world was too Japanese-ish for his tastes. They had tomatoes and noodles, but spaghetti bolognese? Nope. That wasn't a thing. Pizza? Nobody heard of that. Potatoes? Sure, they existed, but if you offered them to the people of Konoha a few years ago, they would take it as an insult. These scrubs had zero idea of how to properly prepare them. It was only rice this, rice that with them. Ren took it upon himself to show these heathens the awesomeness of godly food like potatoes. Bring them the holy food of pizza and show them the proper way of noodles by introducing them to spaghetti bolognese. It took him a lot of time. Ren was by no means a great cook, but he remembered some recipes from his past life and had the time to experiment. Spaghetti was the easiest. Noodles existed. Tomato sauce wasn't that hard. Sure, the noodles were not the same as in Ren's past life and there was no Parmesan cheese, so the taste was a bit different in the end, but he remembered that he couldn't help but cry when he tasted them again for the first time in this life. He sold the recipe to the Akimichi clan. If there was one thing the Akimichis were interested in, it was new recipes. Needless to say, Ren's tomato noodles, as the uneducated fat heathens insultingly named the dish, was a big hit with the clan, and later on with the village. Unfortunately, a patent on a recipe was not a thing in this world. Ren received a quite generous lump sum of money. The Akimichi clan was gracious and gave him 500,000 ryo for it. So, around $50,000. Ren was surprised to get that much. He certainly did not regret wasting his time with it. No longer did he have to live off of the meager orphan funds he received, and it also allowed him to buy better ingredients and try his hand at other things. Pizza was hard and it took Ren 3 months to remake a version of it that looked and tasted good enough. The Akimichi had a hard time evaluating how much they should pay him for it since there were many possible variations of pizza, but in the end, they gave him 1 rank pay, so 1,000,000 ryo, and Ren had no illusions. He knew they would be making hundreds of millions of ryo on his recipes, but he was satisfied. He didn't feel bad about it. The Akimichi were the wealthiest clan in the whole village, even if they kept that info low-key. They owned over 70% of the restaurants in the village. That was the main reason why Ren was selling his recipes to them. He wanted to eat these foods, but he did not want to always have to cook them himself. Naturally, the Akimichi clan introduced these dishes in their restaurants after buying them, so it was a win-win for Ren. He could finally taste a piece of his lost home. Potatoes though, now those were hard to get. They existed in this world, but nobody ate them in the land of fire. They came from the land of earth, so that was a problem. And there wasn't much interest in them over here either, so peddlers usually did not bring any. Ren had to specifically request them from a merchant, and it earned him a weirded out look from the man. Then he had to wait for 6 freaking months for the delivery. It was insane. This world was in dire need of Amazon. Well, maybe once Kaguya is dealt with. Ren hummed to himself. That wasn't such a bad idea. He didn't want to be a ninja until the end of his life. After Kaguya, he will be retiring, thank you very much. As much as he loved fiddling with the seals and chakra, he hated ninja work. Nobody sane could voluntarily sign up for it if they had any other choice. Alas, Ren did not have a choice. It was the only way for him to get the chance to grow stronger. If there was another way, he would have taken it in a heartbeat. He did not enjoy the experience of being a killer for hire. When Ren finally got the potatoes, the rest was easy. Presenting them to the Akimichi clan was a bit awkward. They were all very skeptical about them, mostly because they came from the land of earth, which was a ridiculous reason, but hey, this was Konoha and propaganda was something fed to the natives since they understood the local language. Ren wouldn't be surprised if they thought of potatoes as the food of the devil or some stupid shit like that. But they did try it, and let's just say that the Akimichi did not own just the restaurants. They also owned many fields around the village. After that day, many fields started growing potatoes. The waiter showed up with Ren's order, and with satisfaction filling him at the sight of the potatoes and steak, he dug in. He felt proud for instigating the great potato revolution in Konoha. He was one step closer to enlightening these heathens to the true meaning of the food of gods. Loved this story? Hit subscribe and join Infinite Novel to be the first to catch new chapters. Chapter 8 CH8 Mission time passed, and slowly, it was 2 weeks since Ren became Hinata's tutor. The girl was improving every day, especially at dodging and chakra control. Her chakra capacity was slowly increasing too. If it went like this for 2 more weeks, Ren was thinking about introducing some elemental training for her. After all, the sooner she started with that, the better. But today, he skipped the training session with Hinata. He also notified Hayashi that he would not be available to teach her for the next week and gave Hinata a scroll with instructions about what to do during his absence. He was going on a mission. As a member of the Barrier Corps, Ren technically did not need to do missions. Unlike what the fanfiction stories in his past life portrayed, Konoha Higher UPS were not stupid enough to send their researchers and scholars to the front lines for no reason. There were many ninjas with the official rank of Genin or Chinin who were not exactly combatants. Oh, they knew the basics and were at least borderline competent for their rank, but their fighting abilities were nothing to write home about. For example, that girl from Canon with swirly glasses who joined the cryptanalysis squad, Shiho or whatever was her name. She was part of Konoha's military because of her intelligence, not her fighting prowess. She was a ninja, but she was not a soldier. As a part of the military force, she had a rank, but they wouldn't be sending her on missions because that's not her job. Ren was in a similar position. The Barrier Corps were full of fuinjutsu users. Many of these people were weak. They were the scholarly type who loved spending their day scribbling with a brush, deep in their thoughts, not doing push UPS or running around the village. They were not combatants and they had different duties to the village. They were still ninja and had a rank, but missions were voluntary for them unless it was something like maintenance work on seals, which fell under their specialty. As far as Ren knew, the same went for many other divisions in Konoha. Somebody like Ibiki, Inoichi, or Shikaku? They had to focus on running various parts of Konoha's military. They couldn't go dilly-dallying on a mission who knows where. They had responsibilities inside the village. Some of these men hadn't been on a mission outside the village for well over several years. The reason why Ren wanted to go on a mission despite not needing to was simple. He wanted a vacation from the village. As a ninja, he couldn't leave without permission. And good luck getting permission to leave for anything but a mission if you are an active ninja. Sometimes, Konoha felt like a prison to Ren. Big, spacious, full of people, but a freaking prison nonetheless. He was in a new world and he couldn't even travel freely. He really envied all these overpowered, naive, pathetic, dense harem protagonist retards from Japanese mangas. At least, they could go wherever they pleased. Entering the mission office, as many ninjas called it, Ren saw Tuchinen manning the desk with missions. Contrary to popular belief, the Hokage was not always present. He did not give missions to every ninja in the village. Ren did not know the exact number, but there were over 20,000 ninjas in Konoha. Hokage could never manage to give everyone their missions by himself. Not to mention, the man had a village to run, paperwork to sign. He couldn't be sitting at the assignment desk all day. Instead, Hokage usually only gave missions to the teams under Jonin instructors, because they were on a fast-track Jonin course and there was a chance these kids would be the next generation of village's Jonins. So, knowing them was worth the time investment for the Hokage. That's why all the Jonins with Genin teams took their missions during the same time of the day, because that's when the Hokage was present at the mission assignment desk. Then, Hokage mostly dealt with emergency or high-level mission assignments. S-rank missions had to go through the Hokage office as did some A ranks. But scrubs like Ren? They got their missions from overworked, unimportant career Chunin who were practically just over-glorified paper pushers for the village. Honestly, Ren was not complaining. He preferred those people over having the personal attention of Hokage. He still sometimes woke up cursing Sarutobi for fucking up the canon. It was a habit for Ren by now. Bandit extermination. The Chunin dealing with Ren asked after they exchanged greetings and Ren informed him he would like to have a simple and easy C-rank mission. No, Ren said with a grimace. He took a few of those in the past. He needed expendable test subjects for some of his fuinjutsu that were applied to the body. Obviously, he wasn't going to test them on himself. Duh. But one thing those missions taught him was that this was not a story. It was a reality. And the reality was never black and white. In fanfiction, it was simple. Bandits were bad guys and needed to be killed. In reality? Sure, some of them were scum. But then there were those bandit groups that were nothing but starving orphan kids. They do not kill. They do not rape. They do not kidnap. They just rob money from travelers because they want to feed themselves and their families. And then they are labeled as bandits and somebody hires ninjas to kill them. And so they die. Most likely in a very brutal and painful way. Then, their family either starves or their brothers become the next generation of bandits and their sisters the next generation of prostitutes. It was how this world worked under all that we have punch wizards, glitter of the anime. Did anybody still wonder why Ren absolutely hated being a ninja? Ren always wondered in his past life why bandits still existed in Narutoverse when ninjas always hunted them. But it was quite simple. There were billions of people in this world. This world might even have more people than his previous one, but there are only around 100 to 200,000 ninjas. That's counting all the major hidden villages alongside all the minor ones. And that number contained the researchers and paper pushers. Even then, it was a drop in the bucket. Some bandit groups can go a decade without anybody hiring ninjas to exterminate them. Many bandits manage to even retire from that lifestyle before someone hires a ninja to take care of their group. Ren didn't feel like killing bandits today. If he encountered another bandit group made of kids, it would sour his mood for the next month. It wasn't as if he could let them go either. Once he took the mission, his job would be to kill them. It was better to avoid it altogether. Preferably protection detail. Ren told the Chunin, "I'd like the client to be some hot chick too." He jovially grinned at the bored man, making his lips twitch. "Oh, and wouldn't you like me to pack you food and drinks too?" the Chunin asked with an eye roll. "Nope, I've got my own. Sorry, but I doubt you cook as well as the chefs at Yakiniku-Q." Ren offhandedly said as he shrugged, giving the Chunin a smirk. "Cheeky brat." The Chunin laughed and Ren's gloomy mood improved too thanks to it. "For that, I will find a protection detail for some old geezer for you." "Meh. I'll still get the protection detail mission so whatever. I take that as a personal win." Ren gave him a double thumbs up, mouthing "youth" to him which made even the other Chunin in the room snicker. The atmosphere in the room improved but it barely lasted a few seconds. Umbu suddenly appeared and looked around the room, finding only the three Chunin, which made him let out a quiet curse under his nose. It was around lunch so the mission office was pretty much empty. The atmosphere became tense once more. Umbu only ever showed themselves when something serious was going on. So, this was nothing good. "Lord Hokage needs you three for an emergency mission. Report to him immediately," he said in a bland, unidentifiable tone before disappearing, making the three Chunin in the room look at each other. "Well, there goes my peaceful mission." Ren sighed and his shoulders slumped. "Effing old bastard. Always screwing things over for me without even knowing I exist." Sarutobi Hiruzen was definitely not Ren's favorite person. Chapter 9, Ch9. A mess. "You three were called for an emergency mission and will be sent as reinforcements for another team," the Hokage gravely said to Ren and the two other Chunin who previously manned the assignment desk while the three of them stood in front of Hokage's desk at attention. "This situation caught us at the wrong time." Sarutobi sighed. "A new village, hidden in the sound, emerged right in between Konoha, Iwa, and Kumo so the tensions are at an all-time high. Many Jonins were reassigned to reinforce the borders or run important missions. We are simply short-handed. You three were the Chunin we were able to gather the quickest." "Ah, so I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time." Ren inwardly grumbled. Yes, he technically did not need to do missions but that's not counting emergency missions. Hokage was the dictator of this place and if he told somebody to go on a mission, they had to obey even if they were from a division that normally did not do missions. Ren couldn't even complain because he was certain the Hokage already had the records and files for him and both of the guys around him. He didn't seem very impressed. Ren had the impression that the Hokage was sending them because he really couldn't get anybody else on such short notice. Of course, something like this would happen. So far, Ren's life has been quite peaceful, and no mission has gone to hell for him yet. He kinda hoped to keep it that way, but, your mission is to head to the Land of Waves and reinforce Team 8 led by Kurane Ui, who went there as a protection detail for a bridge builder called Tajuna a week ago. Sarutobi promptly narrated the important information, not wasting even 1 second. What? Ren barely kept himself from widening his eyes in shock. Deep down, he hoped that either Tajuna's mission had already happened and the dude was unfortunately off, or the whole timeline was going to be pushed to a later date after Naruto graduated. But clearly, that was not happening since the mission was right here. A whole year later than it normally should have happened, all the while Naruto was still in the academy, playing pranks and annoying his teachers with his stupidity. A new intel resurfaced after Team 8 left. Sarutobi spoke and it was obvious he didn't like the situation either. The Land of Waves is currently oppressed by a businessman Gato who is known to hire rogue ninjas, and Tajuna is a thorn in his eye. The mission might be upgraded to B, maybe even A rank. Hopefully, it won't come to that. Protect Tajuna and ensure the survival of Team 8. You have 10 minutes to prepare and leave the village. For a briefing, this was a very quick one. Barely 3 minutes passed since they entered the Hokage's office and he was already sending them off. He must be really worried for Team 8. Ren inwardly hummed. Well, Team 8 was full of clan kids, so it was only natural. Understood, Lord Hokage. Ren and the other two Chunin spoke in unison. Dismissed. Ren didn't need to pack. It was the perk of being a fuinjutsu specialist. So, he simply headed straight for the gate, and when he arrived there, he pulled out his notebook, immersing himself in seal work. He had to wait for the other two members of his new impromptu team anyway. Ren. No last name. That was actually quite common in this world. Fuinjutsu specialist. Bad at taijutsu. Know a few winjutsu. Ren quickly narrated as he hopped from tree to tree, a bit frustrated with the slow pace, but he was not the team leader so he did not get to set it. They were barely moving at low Chunin level speed. Itsuki Taro, the team leader, started his introduction. Shurikenjutsu specialist. Passable taijutsu. Few genjutsu and 2 defensive earth techniques. This way of quick introduction was not something Ren made up. They actually taught how to do this in the academy. In case a person is teamed up with strangers and they are short on time, they need a quick way to give a broad overview of their capabilities to their teammates and the team leader. Kenji Jinrei. Specializing in Kenjutsu, and Ren inwardly winced at that. He kinda doubted it would be relevant against somebody like Zabuza. No elemental techniques. Weak sensory talent. Of course. Ren mentally groaned again. These two sounded like Mizuki and Irika. They were the dregs of the Chunin rank. Genins who were promoted to Chunin not because of their strength but because they just served the village long enough and accumulated enough mission records to earn the promotion. It was not anything to be ashamed of, but Ren didn't exactly feel reassured having teammates like this when he was most likely going to face Zabuza of all people. Today just plain sucks, doesn't it? He looked at the gray sky, wondering how Hinata was doing. Ren and his teammates ran in silence for almost an entire day, focusing on keeping their breathing stable and keeping pace. When they finally reached the shoreline, they did not stop. They were Chunin and did not need a boat. They just ran straight to the land of water on the water's surface. It was not that far away anyway, and the journey on the water took them around 3 minutes. They stopped only when they were deeper in the land of waves, as now they would need to find Team 8 and their client. Are you sure you are bad at taijutsu? Itsuki asked while giving Ren a disbelieving glance, his hands on his knees as he tried to calm his hard breathing. Ren just shrugged, not even winded. He wore his gravity seals the entire last year, releasing them only once every month to adjust to his new physical capabilities. Now that he was on a dangerous mission, he fully released them so his body felt extremely light. He did not even feel the light jog they had just undergone. Then again, he didn't want to feel proud about being better than his current teammates. These dudes were basically just genins who served long enough to be promoted. Surpassing them meant exactly nothing. We should dash. Ren started speaking when Kenji's eyes suddenly widened. Somebody just used a powerful ninjutsu, at least B rank, around a kilometer away in the direction of the road. Kenji said, and the three of them looked at each other in resignation. It seemed they found Team 8. But somebody else got to them first. With no time to spare, the trio ran toward the battle and Ren's stomach sank as the nearer they got, the stronger the mist became. Deep down, he truly hoped that since everything changed, maybe Zabuza would not be under Gato's employ, that it would be somebody else. Somebody weaker. But the thick white mist surrounding the battlefield was not a very good sign. We are very close. Kenji muttered, knowing that both Ren and Itsuki would hear him, clearly nervous at being in a thick mist where his senses were impaired. It was even worse since they could hear the vague sound of fighting in front of them but couldn't see anything. Ren gathered chakra into his palms, refining it quickly into wind chakra as he pointed them forward. Great breakthrough. He thought and released a powerful but fairly unfocused burst of wind chakra. It wasn't properly molded so the technique wouldn't be hurting anybody, and it was more akin to a harsh gust of wind, but Ren couldn't afford to shoot an offensive area of effect wind jutsu in this mist anyway. He could hit his allies. The only thing it did was to blow away the mist, showing the battlefield just as Zabuza appeared in the middle of the Genin's protection formation around Tajuna just like he did in the canon. But that's where the similarities ended. The Inyazuka kid barely managed to react and kick Tajuna away as Zabuza's sword cleaved the air where Tajuna's torso was just a moment ago. Sadly, the sword didn't stop there. All three genin and a dog were promptly bisected horizontally across their chests, their corpses falling to the ground in 2 parts with a bloody splatter dyeing the earth red as Kurane Ui screamed in sorrow and rage and ran at the swordsman. Shit! Ren inwardly sighed, feeling bad about the kids, as he ran forward to prevent the woman from committing suicide by Zabuza. Mission failed, I guess. Ren mentally grumbled. This was such a mess. Chapter 10, CH10 vs Zabuza. Korone was clearly an emotional mess after seeing her genin murdered, but she was still a jonin. She calmed down halfway on her way to Zabuza, and instead of trying to charge him down with a kunao, her hands flickered in a flutter of hand seals as she cast a genjutsu at him. Seeing that, Ren quickly whipped out a kunao and threw it at the man's head, but as he expected, Zabuza dispelled the genjutsu and parried the kunao, making it spin through the air around his body. He glanced at Ren with disinterest before turning his attention back to Korone, only for Ren's kunao to explode, engulfing him in a wave of fire and metal shrapnel. Ninjas. They train themselves to notice and react to exploding tags, but if they don't see them, they tend to get careless. Fortunately for Ren, his exploding seals could be put directly on the kunao and were black, just like the steel kunao were made of. They were hard to spot during combat, but Zabuza was not such an easy opponent. Ren's eyes widened as he quickly ducked, feeling Kubikaribasho swish through the air an inch above his head. Pivoting on his heel, Ren swiped a kunao full of wind chakra at Zabuza's calves, but the man just jumped over it, evading injury, only for a kunao to suddenly burrow into his stomach. Retracting his chakra string that scored said hit, Ren hopped back, evading the water that burst from Zabuza's body, confirming that it was just a water clone. Well, that was given. Ren doubted the real deal would have been unable to dodge his kunao on a chakra string trick. The Zabuza he was fighting was a bit too slow for a high A-rank ninja. Glancing around, Ren could barely see Itsuki and Kenji facing another water clone of Zabuza, while Korone seemed to be in a high-speed battle with the man himself. Surprisingly, she was doing pretty well, unlike Ren's teammates who seemed to be at the end of their rope. For a split second, Ren considered who to reinforce, but he quickly realized his teammates were shit out of luck. If he went to help them and Korone died, the situation would worsen. Korone had a much higher value as a combatant, unlike the two dudes almost losing against a water clone. Ren would prefer to find himself with Korone against Zabuza rather than facing him with his temporary teammates. Inwardly hoping that the two chinins would not die against the water clone, Ren jumped toward Korone and Zabuza. Worse, the mist was already starting to reform. Seeing Zabuza going on the offensive as he got dangerously close to Korone, Ren threw a kunao, but he aimed not at Zabuza but at the ground in front of him, causing the man to stop and cautiously jump away from it when it landed. Sadly, the man remembered the exploding kunao trick. But the kunao did not explode this time. Zabuza's eyes looked at Ren, his forehead unhappily creased as he realized he had been tricked into aborting his attack. Ren just gave him a cheeky smile when suddenly, a hand of his shadow clone appeared from the ground under Zabuza, a kunao full of wind chakra cleaving straight through his right ankle. The timing was good. Ren's shadow clone emerged just as Korone hit Zabuza with yet another genjutsu, so the man didn't have time to dodge. But the Zabuza in front of them burst into the water again, revealing that the fight was not yet over. Ren abruptly whipped a chakra string at Korone, connecting it with her back and yanking her away from her position as Zabuza appeared in front of her in a burst of speed and slashed at her. Her body was flung at Ren and smacked into him, causing him to slide on the ground a few feet due to the residual force. Noticing that her face was full of blood due to a shallow cut across her face, Ren rapidly threw Korone away as he felt the air being displaced behind him. "You are annoying." A growly voice sounded from behind Ren, but it was too late to dodge as Zabuza's sword was already halfway through his chest. In a puff of smoke, Ren disappeared, leaving behind a log, which made Zabuza huff in annoyance as he sank back into the mist. Fortunately, preparing the battlefield to Ren's advantage and spreading around some substitution logs was the first thing his shadow clone did before trying to score a hit on Zabuza. Frustrated, Ren appeared on a tree, having no clue where on the battlefield he was. All he could see was white mist, causing his shoulders to slump. "This is getting ridiculous," he grumbled. All he needed was to get his finger on Zabuza or his sword, but it was proving to be far more problematic than it sounded. With no other choice, Ren reluctantly once again sent out a powerful gust of wind, dispersing the mist, only to see Zabuza stand on the pond near the road. Ren's eyes widened as he saw Zabuza's hands going through multiple hand seals before a dragon made of water rose from the pond and smacked right into the middle of an empty road. For just a short moment, Ren's brain froze as he tried to comprehend why. But then Korone shimmered into existence on the pond, standing behind Zabuza as she buried her kunao handle deep into Zabuza's kidney. Surprisingly, this time the man did not burst into the water. She got his real body. Then again, a water clone is unable to use ninjutsu, so the second Zabuza used that water dragon, he revealed his position. With a defiant roar, Zabuza swung his sword at Korone, who was unable to dodge due to their proximity, cleaving her in two straight through her stomach. But her body shimmered again before dispersing into a white mist, and Zabuza's eyes widened in shock as a kunao ripped his throat open, Korone appearing behind him once more. Ren watched it with his jaw on the floor, having a hard time believing this just happened. For the entirety of the fight, Korone was on the back foot. Her genjutsu was very useful for creating openings for Ren, but other than that, it was almost as if she wasn't even there. Ren thought this was going to be like in those fanfictions where the protagonist had to deal with the opponent himself, that he would need to figure out a way to defeat, or at least survive Zabuza, by himself and save the day. He was totally not counting on Korone being actually capable of this. Was this even allowed? Wasn't it against some sort of karmic bullshit of destiny? Just then a mad cry full of sorrow resounded from the tree line and a young man wearing a Kiri Hunter ninja mask ran at Kurone with plain murderous intent, throwing needles at Kurone who seemed to barely stand on her own feet. But Ren knew about Haku's existence and prepared for him. His chakra fluctuated, his hands coming together, the name of a technique he was about to use on his lips, when Haku stumbled due to genjutsu and didn't even try to dodge as Kurone instantly nailed him to the forehead with a kunao. Fun fact, being enraged makes people very susceptible to genjutsu. Ren owlishly blinked and closed his mouth with an audible click. Taking a deep breath, he awkwardly calmed his chakra. I guess I was relegated to the sidekick position. He wryly chuckled. While Ren's brain was working on comprehending the situation, Kurone stumbled her way toward him and sat on the ground, leaning her back on the tree while breathing hard. Thank you. You distracted Zabuza long enough for me to set up my genjutsu. She tiredly spoke, trying to smile but it only came out as a grimace. Ren remembered that her genin team had just died and realized she probably felt like shit. She was clearly exhausted and covered in mud and the wound on her fa weight. Ren blinked, realizing there was no cut across her face. Holy shit. It was just genjutsu. He felt incredulous. He no longer knew what in that battle was real and what was just her playing mind games and setting the stage to land that final blow on Zabuza. Yes, Ren was impressed. But he also felt conflicted. He had underestimated this woman far too much because of some preconceived notions from his past life. But she evidently did not get the rank of Jonin for free. Feeling that his shadow clone had dispelled, Ren's musings were interrupted as he received the memories and inwardly sighed. Kenji was dead and Itsuki was near chakra exhausted. Should he feel a bit bad for being satisfied with how his first serious battle against a highly skilled ninja in this world went? Glancing at Kurone, yup, he was definitely not going to say that out loud. Chapter 11, ch 11. After the fight Kurone, Itsuki, and Ren sat in an empty room in Tejuna's house, still looking disheveled and weary as they had just arrived here a few hours ago, choosing to have a short rest before deciding on how to proceed. Unfortunately, even if Kurone's students and Kenji died, Tejuna was found quivering in the bushes a bit further down the road. And since the client was alive, the mission was still ongoing. Ren looked at Kurone, noting the dried tear marks on her cheeks as she clutched the scroll where Ren sealed the remains of her students. The fact she hadn't even bothered to try to hide them told him a lot about her current mental state. Moving his eyes toward Itsuki, the brown-haired man seemed to have difficulty staying awake, his head constantly nodding off as he refused to fall unconscious. His chakra exhaustion was nowhere near as severe as Kakashi's in the anime, but it was obvious the man would be of no help for a few days. We should go on the offensive and get rid of Gato. Ren plainly said, we have the advantage now. He most likely doesn't know that Zabuza is dead yet so he won't expect it. Not our mission. Itsuki mumbled and he was technically correct. The guidelines would not agree with that course of action. They were hired as a protection detail, not an assassination squad. According to the rules, they should not go beyond the parameters of their mission. Yes, but it is either that or risk Gato hiring additional rogue ninjas, and since Zabuza failed, he will go big the next time, either in numbers or in quality. Ren argued. He honestly just wanted to kill the midget. With Zabuza gone, there won't be that bridge betrayal scene and Ren needed an excuse to deal with him. Zabuza's and Haku's death was not something Ren wanted to happen. He kinda hoped he could have saved them. But this was reality and that was a life and death battle. Ren long ago accepted that he simply could not control every outcome. Unexpected things happen in reality all the time. Silence spread through the room as Ren waited for Kurone to speak. At the end of the day, she was the Jonin in the room and it was her call. You are right. Kurone eventually said in a forcefully bland tone, we can't afford him bringing in reinforcements. But the client can't be left defenseless. Ren, you will stay and guard Tejuna while I will deal with Gato. She added and for a moment, Ren wanted to protest. But then he noticed that Kurone's grasp on the scroll tightened and realized that part of her reason for going out of her way and targeting Gato was probably revenge. With a reluctant sigh, Ren nodded. That complicated his personal goal of ransacking Gato's belongings but he knew there was no changing Kurone's mind now. The meeting ended and Ren stood up, walking out of the house with the excuse of setting up some seals around it. When he was outside and mostly out of sight, covered by a few trees, Ren created a shadow clone who nodded at him and disappeared in a burst of speed. The clone was going to look for Gato's safe houses and gather the money and valuables there while dealing with as many mercenaries as possible. Partly, it was because Ren wanted to help the people of this country. Dealing with Gato would leave a lot of jobless mercenaries on this island and Ren was sure they were going to turn into bandits in a short order. It was better to unalive that problem. These were not some kids trying to survive. Gato hired scum. Slavery, extortion, rape, murder, yeah, Ren was not going to lose his sleep over getting rid of them, but he was a ninja and wasn't above greed. He had to admit that the valuables were a bigger part of why he sent his clone on a hunt. Fortunately, creating a sealing scroll with pocket dimension accessible through multiple seals bound to it was something Ren had already done during his attempts to recreate High Shin. So far, he failed in that endeavor. But he still made a lot of good discoveries during his attempts. Thanks to them, his clone could seal things into said pocket dimension and Ren would be able to retrieve them via another seal he had tattooed around his wrist. The best part? Creating a shadow clone also copied the seal. It was quite convenient. No longer did he have to fear losing his sealing scrolls. It was like having inventory from RPG games and Ren loved it. Of course, he kept that discovery quiet from the village. He didn't want to think about how much trouble the village's higher UPS would give him if they knew about it. The applications of that seal were quite juicy for a military force in an undeveloped world, and as a part of Barrier Core, Ren knew for a fact that the village tried to create something like that for the last 30 years, and failed horribly. Just the potential for sending instantaneous messages or supplies from the village straight to the battlefield would make a lot of people salivate. Ren could only wryly smile at how many secrets he had. Secrets he didn't want the village to know. It was not out of malice or anything like that. Simply, if they knew, they would make his life supremely troublesome, and then he would need to defect. He didn't want that. He might not be loyal to death to Konoha, but he was still born there and lived his entire life there. Preferably, he'd rather avoid such a bothersome thing as having to go on a run. It's why he felt so conflicted about his first serious fight against someone like Zabuza. He was happy that he didn't need to get serious and reveal more of his cards, but he also didn't like that he couldn't try his more destructive seals out. If Korone wasn't there, he could have cut loose. But she was, and Ren was certain everything that happened would be diligently reported to the village. The reveal of his exploding seals was already going to be a pain in the ass. The Hokage was no doubt going to try and have Ren produce them for the village. Fortunately, Ren was a step ahead and ensured that, unlike exploding tags, these seals were usable only by the person inscribing them. It took him weeks of trial and error to manage that, but he put in the effort to ensure he couldn't be asked to become some human printing machine for superior ways to explode things. As for sharing the knowledge on how to create them, the Hokage was not stupid enough to demand that of Ren, and Ren was not going to volunteer it. Personal techniques were a big thing for ninjas. The Hokage could order Ren to teach it to somebody, but that would ruin his reputation with many ninjas and clans who viewed personal techniques and clan techniques as sacred. It wasn't worth the price, and Sarutobi was not going to do it. That was not something Ren was afraid would happen. It was honestly a quite stupid mindset. This was a reason why ninjas had a hard time truly progressing and advancing as a whole. They did not share their discoveries and even tried to keep them to themselves. So, a lot of knowledge was lost with the death of the pioneer who discovered it, found by somebody else, only to be lost again, found again, lost again, and so it went until somebody finally decided to spread the knowledge so it wouldn't need to be rediscovered every 10 years or so, because ninjas died young, and with them, all their hoarded knowledge did with them. Well, as much as Ren was ranting about it, he wasn't going to share his discoveries either. At least, not yet. In the end, it was hypocritical of him, but he could live with that. Done with setting up the perimeter of detection seals, Ren walked back to the house while happily humming, intent on relaxing and enjoying his leisure time. With Korone after Gato's ass and Zabuza dead, this mission was basically over. From here out it was as good as a paid vacation. Chapter 12, Ch 12, Hinata's assignment. After Korone dealt with Gato, the rest of the mission was just like Ren liked them. Boring. With nothing happening. Full of relaxing free time where he got paid for standing around and failing to look menacing. He even managed to rescue several million Ryo from Gato, so there really was nothing he could complain about his time in the Land of Waves. 2 weeks quickly passed and the bridge was finished. The people of the Land of Waves rejoiced. Tajuna almost died of alcohol poisoning. Itsuki, the lucky dog, had a happy Momo time with Tsunami, who nursed him to health from his chakra exhaustion, and Korone was silently grieving, intent to ignore both Itsuki and Ren unless absolutely necessary. Really, Ren started to think he was lacking some kind of protagonist aura. Chicks didn't dig him simply for existing, and getting stronger was actually hard. Wasn't that just unfair? They even managed to find a bandit camp on their way back to Konoha, and Korone decided to use it to vent. After hearing the despairing screams of the bandits and seeing the pain Korone casually dished out on them out of sheer spite, Ren was a bit happy that he didn't have said natural charm of a protagonist. Getting close to a woman who enjoyed mentally torturing her victims did not sound like such a good idea. Yeah, he wished Sarutobi Asuma good luck. Maybe dying to Haiden was the man's good fortune? Now, if only I didn't need to waste time writing a report on the mission. Ren inwardly smiled as he glanced at the paperwork on the Hokage's table. Heh, who was he kidding? He wasn't going to do that. Smart people had shadow clones for their paperwork. Fortunately, it only took 30 minutes before they were dismissed. Yo, girly. Ren, leaning on a tree on Training Ground 41, raised his hand in greeting as Hinata entered the clearing. Missed me? He cheekily asked as she came closer. What he didn't expect was for the girl to spread her arms and engulf him in a hug, pressing her head to his chest. Raising an eyebrow at that, Ren mentally sighed in unexpected fondness and patted the girl's head. Oof. He playfully spoke with a chuckle. It was almost pitiful how starved the girl was for positive attention when he started teaching her. It was even more sad that he didn't even try to make her attached. Of course, the girl didn't seem to have romantic feelings for him. There wasn't enough fainting for that involved in their interaction. Or at least, that's what Ren hoped was the case. He was kinda scared to ask too. He was very much happy being comfortably friend-zoned. He had no intention of getting involved with a 14-year-old kid. Thank you very much. After a few seconds, Hinata moved away with a faint blush and a small, embarrassed smile. So, Ren took it as his privilege to break the awkward atmosphere that was forming around them in the most dastardly way he could think of. Did you do your assignment well while I was away? He asked with the tone of somebody who knew she suffered and enjoyed that fact immensely. He truly had to give it his all to resist smiling at her to make her more annoyed. Hearing him, Hinata froze and her eyebrow twitched as she gave him the cutest glare of them all. Her anger was truly the food for his soul. You are a bastard. 4 hours. Every day. At least. One day I had to spend 8 hours just running around the pond. After the academy. Even father gave me a weird look when I came home. She quietly ranted. Her voice was still a whisper but, not even one stutter. I am truly proud. Ren said with a smug smirk as he wiped out an imaginary tear from under his eye. The girl's fingers twitched as if she wanted to strike him with Jayaken but she held herself back. For the 2 weeks he taught her, he stopped her every time she spoke with a stutter and had her repeat the sentence until she said it without stuttering. It brought her a lot of frustration. But it was helping. Alas, when Ren left for a mission, he still wasn't satisfied with her progress so he gave her an assignment. Her assignment while he was away was to simply run laps around the pond. She had to run 20 laps every day by default. And then, he also ordered her to try answering questions in the academy whenever she knew the answer. He counted that as doing his job as her tutor, considering he was hired to help her get better at the academy subjects, not to properly train her. The catch was, every time she stuttered while answering the teacher, she was told to add 1 additional lap around the pond. But still, 8 hours. Ren wondered how much she stuttered that particular day to have to run 8 hours. He had to resist the grin that was trying to show on his face. It was for her own greater good, and it was going to get only worse from here out. Ren dramatically sighed, putting his right hand clad in a fingerless glove on his heart. The sight of my hard work paying off is truly touching. As playful as he acted, his eyes observed Hinata like a hawk. Her fingers twitched again, a bit more violently. His hard work? It was she who had to run the laps. He wasn't even there. She had to take a deep breath to calm herself down. Ren was a bit disappointed at that. This was the next thing he would have to correct. The girl still held herself back. If she did that only when facing her sister, then it would be whatever for Ren. He couldn't care less. The problem was she held back against everyone. It's why he tried to make her angry and provoke a reaction from her. Well, it was a shot in the dark anyway. It seemed he would need to put together some creative training for her to show her the joys of brutally beating other people. I did the laps as ordered. Hinata unhappily mumbled, but her eyes showed a bit of excitement as she expectantly asked, will I get the reward now? Oh, yeah, he promised her a reward, didn't he? Ren's lips twitched but inwardly, he sported a full-blown evil grin. Did you get faster? He truly tried to ask it calmly, but it was hard to suppress the evil grin forming on his lips and speak with composure at the same time. Yes, Hinata quietly answered, slightly tilting her head at the weird behavior of her tutor. Good. Speed is the most important thing for a ninja. Ren sagely nodded, conceding the battle against the evil grin as he let it form on his face as he cheerfully said, your reward is more laps around the pond. What? He needed to see how fast she had gotten. How was he supposed to gauge that without seeing her run? Hinata looked as if he killed her puppy and it tugged on Ren's heartstring. He inwardly promised that he would teach her something new as the true reward for her efforts. But for now, he was going to enjoy making her day miserable. All in the name of training. What are you waiting for? Ren mirthfully asked. Off you trot. I liked you better when you were away. She muttered under her nose, shocking Ren with her rebuttal. He didn't think she had it in her. So, he answered her with happy laughter as he shooed her with his hand, causing her to reluctantly start running around the pond. The funny thing about Hinata's assignment was that he had no way to police her. He told her he placed a small invisible seal on her to monitor if she did the assigned work. But that was bullshit. How was he supposed to create a seal that could monitor how many times she stuttered in school and then check if she properly ran the laps she was supposed to? Okay. Properly thinking about it, maybe it wouldn't have been that hard to create such a seal. But he was busy. He was lazy. He really couldn't be bothered to do it. He had more important seals to work on. Hinata was really cute in that naive way. It probably never really occurred to her that he had no way to enforce his rules. If she cheated and didn't do the laps, Ren had no way of knowing it. Seeing how much faster she had gotten, she obviously did her assigned training diligently. It was almost a pity he would have to beat that cute naivete out of her eventually. Figuratively speaking, of course. Chapter 13, ch 13, Joys of Teaching. You did well. You are much faster now. Ren said to the panting girl who collapsed onto the grass after she finished 10 laps around the pond. She gave it her all since Ren wanted her to finish them as fast as she could. She still wasn't anything to write home about. He would say she could probably keep up a pace with the guy, Itsuki, who was on the last mission with him, which was impressive for an academy student and spoke a volume about the effectiveness of her physical training under her clan. It was around a high genin level of speed. It was not good enough yet. Ren's goal was to get her to at least a low jonin level speed before she graduated. Maybe more, depending on how motivated to train her properly he felt. The plot might have changed but Ren was sure there would be some manner of war in the near future and a slow ninja was a dead ninja. He'd rather if the girl didn't die. It didn't hurt that he was starting to like her. She had a playful streak that the anime did not show at all. Then again, she did live in an environment where playfulness was tantamount to a deadly sin, probably punished by caning. He had less than 2 years until her graduation. He was playing with the idea of giving her his gravity seals, but he was still hesitating. Now that you are properly tired, it is time for some combat training, Ren suddenly said after giving Hinata 3 minutes to catch her breath. Hinata groaned and pushed herself back on her feet. Sensei? Did you train like this too? Of course not. What would I do that for? Ren said with an easygoing smile, looking at her as if she was crazy. Hearing him, Hinata's lips twitched downward. Then why do I need to go through it? She asked and threw Ren an accusatory look. For my personal enjoyment. Ren raised an eyebrow at her, enjoying the scowl on her face. It wasn't every day one could see a Hyuga scowl. Ren was proud to have this profound effect on the girl. Alright, he continued after a few seconds passed, his smile falling off his face and his tone turning serious. My training was far more tiring than yours. Believe it or not, I am still kindly holding back. And he wasn't even lying. The first half year of using his gravity seals it didn't exactly hurt, but he was practically living in constant discomfort. And he was always tired before his body got used to always being weighed down. And the reason why we are moving to combat training is that you are still not giving it your all during spars in the academy. Ren said, and with the look he threw her he dared her to protest. Hinata just shyly ducked her head, falling silent. She couldn't argue against that and she knew it. Look, I honestly have no idea how to make it better. Ren sighed and gave Hinata a genuine, wry smile. I think your kindness is great. Hinata's eyes widened at that and a faint blush appeared on her face as she suddenly found her hands extremely interesting while pressing her index fingers against each other. It was a habit she did when she was extremely embarrassed. Ren actually found it rather adorable, but they didn't have all day, so he continued, I could give you an entire speech about how you were hurting your classmates by holding back. Now that pulled Hinata right out of her own world and she wilted as if he had just dunked her with a bucket full of ice-cold water. But somehow, I don't think that would help you much. This is the best thing I could come up with. You are going to spar with my clone, trying to hit him. With that, a clone of Ren suddenly came into existence 3 meters away from him. No seals. No calling the technique's name. It just appeared, completely silently. Hinata was not experienced enough to properly appreciate the absolute bullshit he had just done, nor would she realize how much effort Ren had to put into practicing that technique to accomplish this. He had 2 free weeks during the mission and he was not slacking during them, and neither were his clones. Still, this was one of the hardest things he had actually done so far when it came to ninjutsu, so, he kinda just wanted to show off. Even if Hinata's reaction was non-existent, the girl only looked between Ren and his clone, her reluctance clear on her face. She definitely did not want to fight. Deciding to give her a little bit of incentive, Ren grinned, this is your chance to get back at me, you know? You won't be physically hurting me if you hit my clone, but I will still feel the pain once it dispels. The girl suddenly stilled as her head slowly registered what Ren said. He could almost see how she started mentally going through the training and teasing he put her through so far. Slowly, all hesitancy disappeared from her expression and her eyes gained a slight vindictive gleam. Good girl. Ren inwardly nodded in satisfaction. That was exactly the reaction he needed from her. Well, then Ren sat near a tree trunk and used it as a backrest as he pulled out a dark green book, his fuinjutsu notebook, and opened it. Feel free to start whenever. His clone finished for him, giving Hinata a challenging smirk, and putting his hands into his pockets. You only need to hit him once and he will disappear. The shadow clones are extremely fragile, Ren said from behind his book, not even bothering to look at Hinata over the cover. But you will not score a hit unless you give it your all. The clone spoke, but seeing as Hinata still seemed to hesitate, he decided to be mean. Maybe I should make you run a lap around the pond for every second you hesitate. That did it. Without even realizing it, Hinata sprang forward, rushing at Ren's clone who only casually hopped back, and the second Hinata reached the place where he previously stood, a pink paint exploded from a seal he had discreetly placed on the ground with his foot, covering the wide-eyed Hinata from head to toe, causing her to trip in her shock and clumsily rolled a few times on the ground until she stopped right at the clone's feet. Heh, you might make a better pinkette than that classmate of yours. Sakura was her name. Ren's clone taunted, knowing that Hinata secretly disliked Sakura for having Naruto's attention and not caring about it. I heard Naruto likes pink hair, so I decided to give you a bit of help in that regard. Aren't I kind? The glare Hinata sent his way was legendary, but Ren's clone just gave her a cheerful grin. Maybe activate your Byakugan, he kindly advised her in a patronizing way as he looked down at her due to her being on the ground. Not able to contain her frustration any longer and seeing only one good target to vent it, the veins around Hinata's eyes bulged as she gritted her teeth and jumped at Ren's clone once again, this time more carefully. Ren enjoyed his day immensely. The sky was blue, birds chirped in the treetops, the gentle breeze was comfortable, the sun was enjoyable. His fuinjutsu notebook was again a few ideas richer, and Hinata was cosplaying as a rainbow, with a few added colors in the mix. All was as it should be in the world. Ren watched the fight from his comfortable spot, subtly looking over his notebook while hiding his amused smile. Hinata, in her multicolored glory, almost ferociously struck at Ren's clone, trying to hit his stomach with her palm, but at the last second, the clone pivoted on his heel, making her miss. You were so close, Hina-chan. Just an inch. Ren's clone exclaimed with pure happiness in his tone as he aimed his palm at Hinata, who flinched and promptly jumped back like a scared cat. The clone once got her point blank in the face with a seal on his palm, one that projected paint in the direction it was pointing toward. Hinata had no way of knowing that the seal had only ammunition for one use. It was empty, but the clone clearly enjoyed scaring her with it and using it to make her back off when she got too close. Tee-hee. The clone gave Hinata an innocent smile as the seal didn't activate and the girl realized he was just bluffing. Again. It caused her to jump at him with newfound ferocity and angry scowl. She threw one gentle fist poke after another so fast that her hands started to blur, but Ren's clone was always just that inch out of her range, always sidestepping when she thought she got him. His speed always slightly increased when she was sure of her victory. Ren saw how Hinata tried to brutally axe kick his clone's face, only for him to grab her foot at the ankle and joyfully spin her through the air a few times, making her scream in fright, before releasing her foot. At the start, Hinata still pulled her punches despite being angry. But as the fight progressed and she got covered in more paint while Ren's clone taunted her, she slowly stopped holding back. She now tried to hit the clone with all she got, with all her speed and strength, with all the feminine fury she could muster. His clone literally annoyed her enough that she forgot to hold back. Ren had a blast watching it as he wondered if she realized how much force she was using. Some of her attacks were borderline lethal. This was also a great combat training for her. The paint seals could be exchanged with exploding seals, so getting covered in paint practically simulated a lethal hit. Hinata did not realize it, but Ren was using the training exercise to give her some much-needed combat experience. And he had to say, the girl was doing great so far. She was no longer falling for the simplest of traps and even managed to evade most of the hidden paint seals covering the ground of the battlefield. And by now, after almost an hour of fighting, the battlefield had hundreds of seals hidden all over it. The joys of fighting a Sealmaster, right? Hinata had to fight while avoiding them all, and Ren had to admit he was slightly impressed that she was managing it. From time to time, she did accidentally step on a seal and got a new unexpected paint job out of nowhere, but Ren thought she would be triggering far more seal traps than she did. The Byakugan was indeed a cheat in this kind of exercise, but she was not fast enough to hit his clone, and he kinda did specialize in evasion, so really, she had no hope of winning this exercise unless his clone monumentally screwed up. Ren's clone substituted just as he was about to be hit, and a paint bomb suddenly appeared in front of Hinata's gentle fist strike, exploding upon hit and covering her again in paint. This time, it was orange. Opsy. But look. You match with Naruto now. He gave her a double thumbs up with a wide grin as he tilted his head and innocently asked, Databia. Hinata screamed in impotent rage, the orange color dripping from her whole body onto the grass. Chapter 14, Ch 14, meeting Choza. A month slowly passed as Hinata's training intensified. They slowly added weaponry to their spars, and Ren even rarely used ninjutsu when he was certain the girl could dodge it, just to prepare her to face it eventually. He also increased her physical workout and expanded it from just running around the pond to a proper physical conditioning routine. Although it was still focused mostly on speed, strength and endurance were no longer neglected, and Hinata was improving, both in her strength and in the Academy Taijutsu rankings. Unfortunately, she still held back against her classmates, so the improvement was not as dramatic as it should have been. But Hayashi was happy that his daughter started to show some meager potential again. Those were his words. So, Ren decided to let the issue go for now. The funny thing was that her improvement in the rankings came from the fact that she was too used to fighting Ren's clone. So, despite holding back in the academy spars, she now simply did not hold back enough. She was still not the best in her class according to these rankings, but she was usually in the top 7. That didn't mean that Ren neglected his own training. Hinata was in the academy for most of the day, from morning to around 3 in the afternoon. Ren had enough time to do his training and experiments. Plus he had shadow clones, and while he might not be Naruto level of broken with them, he was slowly developing some seals to make his clones more useful. He had to get to a level where he could at least survive Madara, and Ren was very aware that it wasn't going to happen without cheating. Admittedly, he didn't really have a fleshed out idea about how exactly he was going to accomplish it, but he was certainly going to try his best. Or, die trying. He'd rather not do the latter, though. Entering Yakiniku-Q, Ren was intent on having some spaghetti today, but before he could find a place to sit, somebody suddenly shouted at him, "Ren, come and join us." Ren turned toward the voice and smiled when he saw Choza Akimichi sitting at the table with Shikaka Nara and Inoichi Yamanaka. He didn't know the other two men, but because of his dealings with the Akimichi clan, he knew Choza quite well. With a small exasperated sigh, Ren waved at them in greetings and approached their table. "Hello, Choza." He turned his head to the other two and nodded at them. "Mr. Nara and Mr. Yamanaka, nice to meet you. I am Ren. Sorry for intruding," Ren said as he sat down and was about to gesture at the waitress that he wanted to order. Don't bother. Just take what you want from the table." Choza interrupted him. The table was overflowing with various dishes Choza ordered for himself. But since he was willing to share, Ren wasn't going to refuse it. Free food was free food, after all. Reaching for the spaghetti dish, he put it in front of himself before pausing for a second. Then, he put his hand above an empty spot on the table, and with a small poof, a plate with 3 slices of cake appeared there. "Since you are taking care of the lunch, I can provide the desserts," Ren said, enjoying the expectant look on Choza's face. Cakes were another thing that had a very limited variety in this world, and while Ren did not know any cake recipes from his past life, he was perfectly capable of hiring a confectioner and giving him a few ideas. Most of them ended in horribly sweet failures, but some were a success. Needless to say, Ren always had a cake on hand. What would be the point in practicing fuinjutsu if he couldn't at least enjoy his favorite food no matter where he was? "Oh, I can see why Choza likes you." Shikaka chuckled as he took one slice of the cake. "Come to think of it, it's been a year since you became a ninja, Ren." Choza spoke as he took the second slice. "Look at you. You even managed to earn a Chunin rank. I am happy you are doing well for yourself." It's been a busy year. Ren nodded, leisurely digging into the spaghetti dish in front of him. I heard about your last mission. My condolences. Inoichi took the last slice. Yeah, poor kids. We were just a few seconds too late. Ren wryly smiled. He was pretty sure that Chose's friend was low-key trying to make a psychological profile of him, but Ren didn't mind. It was probably a habit for Inoichi at this point. He was talking about the reprimand. Shikaku interjected, his eyes curiously glancing at Ren. Oh, I don't care about that. Ren shrugged. I am perfectly fine staying Chunin until retirement, so it doesn't bother me. Killing Gato apparently pissed off a few people among Konoha's leadership, so they decided to get butthurt and cause trouble for Ren in the only way they could. Sadly, getting rid of the man did not help the Land of Waves much, as the 4th Mizukage decided that the country would be a perfect place for a forward base against Konoha. Gato was his trade partner too, so his death gave him a proper justification for his actions. It was a clusterfuck of a situation. In canon, the man was long dead, so it wasn't as if Ren could predict his actions. Konoha and Kiri were now on the verge of war, but Ren didn't worry. Kiri was in shambles and still deep in their civil war. He believed that nothing was going to come out of this. It would be supremely stupid of Yagura to start something right now. And besides, Ren didn't have any way to stop the situation from becoming worse even if the war started. But because of this outcome, both Kurone and Ren were officially reprimanded for their actions and for doing something outside of their mission parameters. Ren's prospects for promotion to Jonin in the future did not look all that bright with that reprimand on his record. But, meh. The joke's on them, even if they offered the promotion to him, he would likely refuse it. This suited him just fine. Kurone was devastated. The poor woman lost her genins and then had the book dropped on her. Inoichi sighed. I heard that there were even talks about demoting her back to Chunin, but the Hokage got involved. Choza added, but enough about the depressing stuff. He turned toward Ren with an expectant grin. How is training the Hyaga kid? Anything you say will be used against Hayashi. Shikaku suddenly spoke, lightheartedly warning Ren, Choza doesn't like him. Just keep that in mind, kid. Rolling his eyes, Ren huffed, Hinata is good. I have problems making her stop holding back, but she has a lot of potential. All it takes is a bit of positive attention. Positive attention, really now? Choza's eyes sparkled. Will I be invited to the wedding? Please, don't joke. Ren almost choked on the spaghetti in his mouth and just barely managed to swallow it before speaking. What? You are 17 and the girl is 14. It could happen. You are spending a significant part of your day with her and giving her positive attention. Choza teased, making both Inoichi and Shikaku chuckle at the dismayed look on Ren's face. I'd rather not have angry Hayashi Hayaga chasing me all over the village, thank you very much. He grumbled. I doubt he would care. Inoichi scoffed, clearly not having a good opinion about Hayashi's parental skills either. Well, if you fail to woo the girl, you could always marry Chisaki. Choza joked and laughed out loud at the grimace Ren now sported. Chisaki was Koji's 6-year-old cousin who declared she was going to marry Ren after trying his food. It would have been adorable if her parents hadn't taken it seriously enough to give Ren a marriage offer. Something must have shown on Ren's face back then, because Choza had always such a great time teasing him about it. Sometimes it was easy to forget that this world was not completely out of the medieval ages yet. The conversation continued and Ren had to admit that both Inoichi and Shikaku were pretty cool guys. They didn't joke only about him. Soon enough, the jokes about Inoichi being an overprotective father, Shikaku finding everything troublesome, and Choza's gluttonous nature started flying left and right, making the mood merry. All in all, Ren had a pretty good time with them. Unfortunately, after 20 minutes he had to go as his clone dispelled, alerting him that one of his fuinjutsu experiments was a success and he should go check it out. After Ren left, Inoichi looked at Choza. Did he really help Hayashi's kid get better? I heard she didn't take her training seriously. Nah, that's not it. Shikaku boredly said, from what little Shikamaru shared, the girl is a mess. She is always holding back, not wanting to hurt others. It's probably very troublesome for her teachers. Yeah, Koji said that she was cool. Choza sighed in exasperation. Koji is the same, that boy. He helplessly shook his head. Now, Hinata is still holding back, but her results are improving and she wins more spars. Whatever Ren is doing, it seems to work. Oh, that must bother Hayashi. He tried to make her improve for years and this upstart Chunin just comes and manages to do it in a month. Shikaku let out a bark of laughter before taking a sip from his cup. That Hayaga pride must sting right now. Choza exclaimed with a laugh, taking a hearty bite out of the chicken leg in his hand. Unnoticed by them, Inoichi stayed quiet, deep in thought as his eyes stared at the chair where Ren sat a few minutes ago. He loved his daughter, but he was also starting to worry about her future. She didn't train, only focusing on the Uchiha boy. She needed a wake-up call, but Inoichi knew he was too soft when it came to his princess. Maybe. His thoughts strayed in a direction Ren would definitely call troublesome. Every subscriber brings us closer to more epic novels. Join Infinite Novel today.